7:19. Sorry to keep everyone waiting as usual. I apologize. This meeting calls to order meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen, Select Board. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. The meeting is also accessible by remote participation. It can be accessed via Zoom. The phone number for the Zoom meeting is 646-558-8656. The meeting is ID number is 899-4587-3046, and the passcode is 623603. I want to thank everybody that helped to make the Memorial Day parade. It was a great day. Everything went off smoothly. Everything was fine. It was great to have something back in town after the hiatus. So that was great. And also want to thank, I don't know if we had the meeting before that, I want to thank everybody that put together the annual town meeting afterwards. And a lot of the same people worked on both events. West Newbury Fire Department's been kind of busy lately with a couple of big emergencies, and thank you all to them for everyone coming out safely. Coming announcements, the 2022 summer bandstand concert schedule starting June 23rd. Usually, I think they're all on Thursday evenings at 6:30. You can look up the what performers are going to be on the town website. Yes. They take more concerts than in the past. There's more. We're still looking for positions on town boards and committees. We'd like people to volunteer for them, and there's in this situation there are a lot of them because we're the annual appointment for all the boards and committees will be happening in June. So if you have some interest, please contact the town manager, and we can get you on the list. And as usual, see what's going on in town, www.newbury.org/subscribe. So our first item on the agenda is a proposal to rename the West Newbury Senior Center to the SAGE Center, SAGE being an acronym for Social Activities, Growth, and Education. We'll talk about that.
Sure.
If you can go to the mic. Thanks.
Christine Marshall, the COA Director, and our board members of the Council on Aging have been talking about this for a few months now, just to try to increase our participation with our new programs that we're offering. Many other communities have also changed their names just to take that word senior out of that to attract, our younger seniors as well. And this was all them. They came up with this, and I worked on the logo. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, this was discussed last month at the COA board meeting. They were unanimous, and so I had recommended that the board, prior to any formal new name or signage, that it would be appropriate to request that the select board approve that or not.
I think it's great. Have other places used it? You said a similar strategy, or the exact same word, or not, or
I would say a similar strategy, or going to community centers, or calling it something social, to that sense, to move away from senior more towards the social aspect of it.
Was Sage original idea here? Use that name?
It was an original, it was an original idea from one of our,
You should
from one of our members.
copyright.
So, I would move to approve it.
I don't know if we need to, but I think it's great, yeah.
Yeah, they're asking us to accept it.
So I move that we accept the name change of the seat currently, with currently known as the senior center to Sage. Favor? I call that.
Thank you.
Great, next Christine.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Christine.
Nice logo.
I like it, yes.
And I will say, because Christine really understated her role with the brainstorming. But this was the chosen logo of, I don't know how many, 6 or 7 different varieties that she did with her graphics program. So that was really nice.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Our next item is consider the application of Alex Niles to serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Both of you. Yeah. Okay. Jim, what would be the term of this, as this is an elected position, so it will only be till the next election? Would that be the town election or the November election?
It would be the town,
Okay,
so it'd be a 1-year appointment,
okay.
which would be till 2023, specifically May 1st of 2023.
Well, so yeah, this is a joint appointment, and we did hear from Brad, and I spoke to Brad late last week to see if his email meant that he and Wendy were free, because I hadn't heard from Wendy, and he said he believed they were. And I got a text message from him at 7:09 asking if there was a delay opening the meeting. I said there was, but then I texted him that we were convening. So I do believe Brad intends to join the meeting. I don't know if in person or via Zoom, but
Was Wendy going to come through?
when I spoke to Brad on Friday, he said he thought so, but I
Sorry, Angus.
oh, here he is. Oh, there's
I didn't realize that my daughter had changed my Zoom name to Annie with a couple frogs. I'm here, and I texted Wendy. I let her know she's pretty slammed with work. So, but I think we're good to proceed, at least from my end.
Can we do that?
Do we kind of need a form in order
I would say a quorum between the two boards is 4.
to? Okay, okay.
That would be my,
One of the total.
of the total. So
Okay.
total is 6.
I'll go with that, Matt.
Quorum is 4. That would be my.
So Alex is not.
Okay, Alex, hi.
Alex, you come up to the right.
baseball practice.
All right.
Good, how are you?
So, yeah, so you're clearly a baseball, but kids baseball.
I am. I coach this year. I'm coaching 3 baseball teams.
Wow.
Stay active with that and play football. Yes, coach those teams too. So I have a lot of access to the youth sports programs now. Yeah. So I'm trying to keep moving forward and go.
So I guess that, that'll, with, will help to balance balance the interests on,
Yeah.
on the,
I've been working a lot with Angus and Wayne and Brad, kind of the field work completed the season. To a contractor, and possibly going a different route in the future. To kind of work all that together. Okay. So I've been working with them, kind of field coordinator down here to Brad to make sure our fields are utilized.
So will, I mean, if you are appointed, do you think there's any conflict between being on commission and also acting on behalf of baseball?
No, because I have other things in town that I'd like to see get changed. And I think it's a way to have a good voice for the kids. But there's also two other members of the board that are really involved with baseball, with football per se. We have good discussions about it. I think what I know, what people say to me to them, we discuss it.
It may be that when it comes to things like setting fees, I haven't looked into that specifically, but that's something that we would look at if there was a member on the commission, whose organization might be affected by fees. You might need to recuse yourself from that. For instance,
or
the summer rec, right. That's where there's a family relationship there. Yeah. So anything to do with like setting wages or something like that would be a clear recusal. Be a case by case basis.
well, I would move that, if nobody has any questions, I move that we Parks and Recreation for until the next annual election.
All in favor? Brad, you voted?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the motion. I didn't quite hear the motion, but if Angus or Jim, could you read that? I'm sorry, Rick. I didn't hear the whole motion.
So the motion was to appoint Alex Niles to fill the vacant seat until the next town election on May 1st, 2023.
Great. Okay. I'm in favor.
Thank you, all. Thank you. We're working.
So Jim will contact you to see about getting sworn in, which you need to do before you vote. So great.
Thank you very much. Angus.
Thank you.
Okay, our next, similar, we're looking to fill vacancies on the Conservation Commission, existing and forthcoming ones. So we have Rick Purple and David Parrott.
I think you're both present tonight. Okay, great. And you're David?
I am not.
You're not David. Okay.
David's on the-
Oh, Dave, I'm sorry.
Hi.
David's on the screen.
Yep.
Okay, great.
I'm on the stream.
So as you know, we have one vacancy presently. We've also received notice from Tom Atwood, who's currently in the commission, that when his term expires at the end of this month, he would not be renewed or he's moving out of town. So that vacancy we have in writing will be effective as of July 1st. The commission does provide for one associate member. So one option the board could consider if you find that you wanted to appoint both members would be perhaps to appoint one effective immediately. Another could be appointed as an associate with a term July 1st. But I don't want to get ahead of where you are. You might have questions for the applicants, and they're both here. So.
So, George, want to come up to the mic? Oh, thank you for volunteering.
Good evening.
What's your interest or experience with conservation?
I have a degree from state in geology and neuroscience. Years ago. I'm concerned about the
I recently retired. I'm still trying to decide what to do, so I think volunteering would be a good opportunity for this.
So I understand you went to a commission meeting.
Last,
Yes.
You get a sort of firsthand view of legislation and get a firsthand view every day of a lot of what the Conservation Commission works at.
that's true.
Yeah.
I see that there's, besides what the commission does, there must be other things that need dealt with, like the river rolling and Washington side, the banks.
Yeah.
It's time to consider more options.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, that's not related to what the Concom does, but there is another group of people in town, climate change resilience committee that's looking at that issue specific relative to, specifically relative to.
Well, yeah.
That'd be really helpful.
At this point, I did go to a meeting with them on the river.
Okay.
Back in this spring.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what they've done, but having been a boat owner, I understand people want to use the river. Slow those down.
Yeah. Well, I think the town, regulate speed, basically no wake zone. Don't regulate speed on the river, but I quite honestly, I don't know. Detail of how we do it here. I've been on the river a bunch of times, but I can't think of where, where it's- But I guess that's not really directly relevant.
That's for the, another.
That's how I get it harder.
Just how much time do you have?
We got free job for you. Keep going.
I think that's.
And George, if I just speak closer to the mic, I'm getting some,
Pull it up. Yeah.
How's that? That's work. I think I'll stick with one.
Okay. So George, you're okay with if you can do on the meeting schedule, evenings and all of the so forth for the regular meetings? Okay.
I think that would go work.
Okay.
and site visits are often scheduled on weekend days, Saturdays, or more often Sundays. Is that, yeah, is that, you amenable to that?
Okay, let's,
So I moved to appoint George Purple, for.
what,
Yes, we should probably speak.
let's talk to the other person first, and then we'll decide.
Only one right now.
One's not until
Yeah,
July.
one will be an opening in the other 23 days.
Okay.
I can wait for 20 days also, so it's not a problem. Either one.
Mr. Parrott, is that, are you, there you are.
Hello. Hi, sorry. Hard to hear a couple of you.
Did you say it's hard to hear a couple of us?
I can hear you now. Yeah, no,
Okay,
it's,
great.
So David, tell us a little bit about your interest in the Conservation Commission.
yeah, no,
You have an idea what their responsibilities are?
yeah, I do,
Okay.
to some degree. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like highly qualified. I'm interested. I want to learn. I heard the call for volunteers. And I like the outdoors. I like nature. It's been definitely something I've been enjoying a lot of since I moved here. West Newbury is just an awesome place. I want to keep it that way.
So I'm just curious, you're self-employed, education, English and computer science.
Yep.
What, just out of curiosity, what do you do? Not that I have anything to do with the Conservation Commission, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I help early stage ventures. I write software, architect, and stuff like that. So it's all startups and crazy fun stuff. The internet is magic.
This is Angus. I'm the town manager. Thanks for your interest. Have you had an opportunity to attend any of the Concom meetings or look into any of their permitting or kind of the function that they perform?
I have attended some of the meetings, yeah, and I have a basic understanding of what you all or what Concom does, yeah.
So I would just let both of you know that there's a state group of Conservation Commissioner. And I think tomorrow night, they have the first of several fundamentals of conservation commissions. It's online. So it's MACC is the website. So if you can jump on that first one tomorrow, I think that would be good preparation for serving on the conservation commission. I'm happy to send a link to both of you because I haven't even.
That'd be great.
And you don't have to wait till the 1st of July also.
Okay, if you want to do that, that solves the problem.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
But if there's nothing to stop you from going to the meetings, I
Yeah.
think it'd be good to, yeah. It'd be great to get up to speed. They have a lot going on right now. It's a busy.
So Dave, there's a meeting going on right now. If you're appointed right now and Jim can sign you in if you want to go.
Yeah, I'm out of town. I'm not sure if I could do that today.
Yeah, I was kidding.
okay, so I would make a motion to appoint David Patter to the existing open position on the Conservation Commission with a term to end.
I want it, right? What we have to do is we-
So let me pull that up. Hold on.
stop.
Yeah, that's a good point though, because we're getting so close to the end of the term.
So, the term that he is filling, the term you'll be appointing to ends June 30th, 2022. The current vacancy.
That would be Kathy's.
No, that's the current vacancy.
Oh,
The current vacancy is until June 30th of 2022.
okay.
And then Tom Atwood's ends June 30th, 2022. So
Yeah.
both these seats would have to be reappointed.
So
Could they concurrently, could they appoint Mr. Parrott for both the remainder of this month and for a new term? I mean, you could take both actions
Same
tonight.
time.
Yeah.
So what is the length of the regular? 3? Okay,
So sort of a two-stage motion.
So you could appoint him to finish out the term and to the next term, and then you can appoint Mr.
Okay,
Parrott
so-
to the next one.
for,
And can you swear him in, can you swear him in once for both terms, or does he have to come back to get sworn in?
Yeah, once someone's sworn in, they don't need to get sworn in every time they're reappointed. Once they're sworn in, that stays with them.
I try to get everybody.
No,
what I
that's
can.
swearing at is different than swearing in, Rick.
So this, so that means these two positions they'll run concurrently.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, just so the board knows, there will be another vacancy coming up in August with Kathy leaving the board.
okay.
And
So
then,
she's not this one.
no,
Okay.
Kathy's term runs till 2024. And then the associate position is vacant and it's a yearly term.
Okay. So again, my motion is to appoint David Parrott to the open position on the Conservation Commission to fill out a term until June 30th of this year. And then additionally, the term to start July 1st through June 30th, 2024.
2025.
2025, okay. Discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
So now we have to
Now,
do.
I gotta do.
I tried. All right, I move to appoint George Preble to the Conservation Commission for a term beginning July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2025.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you both. Thank you.
George, Dave, thanks a lot.
All right.
Thank you.
George and David, I'll reach out to both of you to get you sworn in. And there's a couple ethics things that you guys need to file, and there's a test you need to take, and that's it.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you both.
So our next item on the agenda, just briefly, we've got some correspondence last week about the graduating senior signs that were put up next to Pipe State. The individual that wrote to the board felt that we didn't put it in a prominent enough place compared to the other two Pentucket towns. This is signs in town have been an issue all different ways. When we approve them, then someone else wants us to put the same sign right next to it. The town has had the policy in the last 5 or 10 years of trying to limit the number of signs that are put up on the roadside. It's sort of, we're trying to, everyone talks about the rural nature of the town, and we're trying to actually accommodate that in keeping down sort of visual pollution as well as everything else. But with the ease of production of these plastic signs and their relative inexpensiveness, it's easy for people to make these, and they're a lot more prevalent than they used to be. So that having said, the graduation has already taken place, so we can't bring back the past, but they wanted to address whether next year we might have a different policy. I'm only speaking for myself, in that this person suggested that we use the training field. I can't vote for that. The training field is a sort of sacred place, or more for our people that have participated in service to our nation, and to, if we give it to one, then there will always be another set of people that will say, well, you gave those people permission, you want to give us permission, and we'll be dealing with this indefinitely. So I will just leave it there. I don't know how the other members of the board feel about our choice. Do we make a bad choice, or should we be more flexible?
Well, if I can just add to this conversation, I responded to his initial email. He thought that the select board had decided to put the signs there. Shared with him that the
Okay.
committee, that was their suggestion, and approved it. It's not.
That's true, too.
And perhaps that committee for next year can look into other options. And we're kind of close to-
We didn't think of everything, no.
Yeah, so there may be another location. I agree about the committee personally.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out too that, they reference the training field, of course, people are gonna immediately think of the garden club. But there's long precedent there, and, within the town, within the bylaw, it does specifically reference grandfathered uses and, the garden club, and I know, aren't you never been a fan of that particular allowance?
No, I am,
But-
but I'm not, Glenn was not a favorite.
Okay, sorry, I didn't attack you. But in general, there is long precedent for that particular, or in that particular case.
And it's also, it is there where the event is. Right. So, I just thought we should think about that, and we can, if people have suggestions, and we had suggested along by where the Page School is, and that was actually turned down.
And, in a way, we have a highway in town, not exactly a high-speed route, but it's probably, if there's such things as dangerous road, West Newbury, it's probably it. Actually, we have, but, we did have to put a steep here, but, it seems to me to not be a great thing to put something at a place in town where people are gonna be slowing down on the highway. Now, I don't know where it is in Groveland, I'm sorry, in Merrimack, but in Groveland, I think it's at that, I can't remember the name of the park, but it's right, it's right in the center of town, there's a traffic light there. People are slowed down, or stopped even waiting for the light to turn. I don't know where in the park the signs were put up, but my guess is, that the signs were causing people to stop or slow down in the travel lane. And that would be my concern here, something on Main Street.
I mean, it's something, I don't think we have to make a decision tonight, or
No, but it's
just
just-
something we can think of. I mean, I don't know if we want to, use the front of this building. There's space there, there certainly is space there. We have signs there already. So I don't think it necessarily a traffic issue. It's like more aesthetic precedent issue. If we do, maybe we have to tweak it. Maybe we say we can do things related to the school system or whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. But if we don't, otherwise, then we're going to have the diabetes bike race, and every single thing is going to want to put their sign up there. I don't think we want to get into that.
And you are correct, absolutely, about precedent. In my initial email to Wendy, I think it was very early in the morning, and I kind of said, I don't know if precedent. It is actually, you're 100% right, not just on kind of people's standing to say, well, hey, they did, so why don't I? But there are actually issues I had forgotten. But from my past life as a town planner, there's significant First Amendment issues to do with signage. And so if you do allow it for one, there is, and there's a whole lot of history on this, but there are, there are court cases that if the so-called public square is made available to an entity, you can't kind of pick and choose. So I think you're correct to raise the precedent issue of if you do start allowing signage in a location, say in front of this building, it's worth, doing more research that we would do on what might that open you up to in terms of future requests people might make.
Okay. Our next item is the updated draft on the pipe safety audit and the concept plans for the new crosswalk and potential lights or whatever.
So we've got Liz Altman from the consultants, and I believe Wayne was on the line. I'm not sure, maybe he's coming down from upstairs, but he was on a minute ago. But we did a couple of posts to the website since the last meeting 2 weeks ago, and we've gotten a number of responses that have come in right up to and through over the weekend for sure. I'm not sure, maybe even today as well. So as those have been coming in, we've been sharing them with Liz and her team. And I believe part of what she'll be speaking to is kind of the summary of what we've heard from those comments. Here's Wayne. Wayne's joining us in person, Liz.
Okay.
So Liz, did you receive additional comments that we haven't seen, or is this all of them?
I think maybe you didn't get the ones that came in over the weekend. But it was two more came in. So there are 12 individuals in total sent in comments on the concept plans. So just to remind you, option 3 was the option with the crosswalk to the east. Oh, I can share my screen briefly. Sorry, that was the wrong. Okay, so option 1 had 2 crosswalks. Option 2 had one crosswalk to the west of the school auxiliary access driveway, and option 3 had the crosswalk to the east of the auxiliary access driveway. And of the 12 individuals, the preference was for one crosswalk in this general location. The equestrian responses we got would like to see the driveway a little closer to the school's main driveway due to connections for equestrians to trails to the rear of the school. So overall, all of the comments were very positive. There was another suggestion for the pedestrian flyover, which we discussed last time as an expensive option. But overwhelmingly, this was the preferred alternative, with maybe trying to tweak it a little bit more to the east and maybe put, I think we could put a larger level landing area to accommodate the equestrians as they come down the school driveway to wait to cross. And then we will also tweak this to show the sidewalk behind the guardrail to again accommodate the equestrians and protect the pedestrians from the vehicular traffic. I checked with our highway department, and that is an acceptable design. So what we will do for the next meeting is condense all the comments into an improved final version of this plan, which shows, as we'll tweak it to the east as much as we can. Like I said, we'll try and accommodate the equestrian comments as much as possible.
Is there a where that is now? Is it low there on the south side, on the DPW side? is it low right there? Do you have to put a lot of fill in there or it slopes down there, right?
It slopes down, but not till a little bit far. If you can see my cursor, it's a little bit farther back from the guardrail. So we can reconfigure that and it'll get finalized in design. I don't think you would need a lot of fill. It doesn't start to drop off till a little ways behind the existing guardrail. And then this is fairly flat through here. So.
This is right, you won't need a retaining wall, but you need some earth to reinforce that sidewalk slack. You won't need a retaining wall.
You won't, okay.
Unless you make it 30 feet wide. We're
Okay.
talking another maybe 5. Unless you're talking maybe another 5 feet wide, maybe. Like,
Right, it wouldn't be a,
Like Queen's carriage, if you saw that the other day, the gold carriage was being brought by the horse, if you might have.
that was it. Well, that's-
Well, actually, for the equestrian purposes, we want it wider than 5 feet, because then it will, I mean, it will start to roll off.
5 feet,
Yeah,
fine,
you think 5 foot?
yes,
Exactly, okay.
yes, but it was my request to be behind the guardrail instead of between the guardrail and the street.
Liz, could you hear, that was Deb Hamilton, who I know you've got her comments. could you hear her comment just now?
was there an additional one besides moving it
No,
behind?
no,
the-
she was just basically echoing what she'd already put in writing, but she just was sitting in the audience. I wanted to see if that came through for you.
The third one deals with the actual paint. And is it possible that between the edges of the crosswalk, there is an area that doesn't have paint stripes that some horses are terrified to cross?
Yes, we can pull the paint back on one or either side to have like an open area right in here.
Great, and create something between the green area and the school driveway.
Right, a flat area in here for equestrians to wait to cross at the,
I mean, we've essentially got that now, but the sight lines are not that great with the vegetation. Thank you.
So that you mean like gravel?
Yeah.
Gravel sidewalk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Comment just came in, I think Angus forwarded to you, also agreeing with option 3, but asking if we consulted the housing authority about use of their driveway.
We have
I-
housing authority, but we have to look at that line of the property lines. I'm not sure. if it goes
I'm
all the
not
way
sure
down.
if
We
that's
struck it all the way
the
down to
housing
our corner. It's a funky property,
The driveway.
the driveway itself.
Yeah.
The driveway itself, that one between the school. or
It
the
says
actual
the
driveway.
attorney owns the driveway across from the Pike State Access Road. There's nothing in the record that we consulted.
So- In front of their house, they own that.
Yeah.
I know that, but I thought the parcel, we could check the parcel, but I think where the cursor is now, I think that's school/town, and it's to the east is the housing authority. It's just-
Okay.
That's a random.
That's what makes sense.
Parcel.
to me, Yeah.
It makes sense to have a road in the middle of somebody's property, but it's.
I guess the other point is that it would be good to rope them into the conversation.
Mhm,
So they're aware it's going on. I mean, it's on the web page. and everything, but,
Yeah.
My other question, Liz, was, I remember I think 2 of the comments asked about a stairway from the parking lot down to the sidewalk, kind of midway. Is that something that could be incorporated?
well, we can look at it in design to see if we can do something like that. There is a small rock retaining wall right here, so I don't know about the difference in grade and if we can put a stairway in and not impact the parking lot, which I know the school uses for, circulation during drop off and pickup. I want to have that as a item that we consider during design, and I have actual survey, but it can, if we can, it's a good idea.
So where did that request?
I was in, I think, 2 or 3 comments.
Because it won't be handicap accessible, obviously. It might require handicap people to go further.
Yeah.
And they're putting them into a parking lot without any pedestrian accommodation.
Sort of right in the
Cautious.
middle of the parking.
Because we're buying ourselves another headache. So if we put the pads up on the stairs, now they're in the middle of the parking lot. 3 years later, we get a request to paint a sidewalk from those stairs to the west to connect that one. So I just really wanted to be careful. We're not abandoning people where they don't want to be. It's a great shortcut when you don't want to walk all the way around, but I think we have ADA issues, we have to treat it pretty fair. And you don't want to have somebody stranded in a pond. Saying, no, I'm not.
I agree. I would think that we would have to do both. The sidewalk would have to continue up and if we were able to even do it.
Yeah, that was their suggestion, wasn't it, to add that in addition to the sidewalk?
So
That
it's
was-
just maintenance.
Yeah.
So I cringe when you say stairs. Nobody wants to cringe on stairs,
Yeah.
especially that's not attached to a building. You
Right.
have to go out of your way to go climbing on those stairs.
How high is the retaining wall?
It's a retaining wall small, but it's earth. So you got the retaining wall, then you got another
Yeah.
8 feet of earth or whatever, 7 feet of earth above the wall.
And it's steeper than somebody can, I mean.
In my old days, I could climb it, but no, now I
It's
can't.
not going to be a hurt pack.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It'd be tough. It's overgrown. Just to confirm Deb's request about the path from the crosswalk to the east of the driveway, we agree that we think like gravel path, because it won't be handicap accessible. It's fine, we don't want to have a handicap accessible sidewalk end, because that would get us in trouble. So if we do a path for the horses from the crosswalk going east to the driveway, the school driveway,
Yeah.
we look for like a stone dust or a gravel base or something that's wide enough.
It could be blacktop.
We just have handicap issues. If it looks like a sidewalk, we have to have ramps. We have to have another ramp on the other side to accommodate, and we're starting to bite more than we could chew.
The gravel
So,
is fine.
I just want to be careful. We're not, unless we got a plan to build the sidewalk all the way down the Coffin Street and to the other end, then yes, we should do it. But I want to be careful. We're not going against mascot, obviously. If we have one wheelchair ramp that goes to nowhere, we're not going to improve that. Correct, Liz, if we just had a.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Got it. Got it.
So that was it. Someone asked for just to show the sidewalk on the south side of Main Street from Coffin all the way over to Chase. We would have to do some kind of crossing treatment at Coffin Street to get any pedestrians from that neighborhood to the sidewalk.
Are you able to put that up on the screen, Liz? That larger concept?
Oh, yes. Can you see that now?
Yep.
So from Coffin over to Chase, it's small because it's quite a little bit of a distance. It's obviously not engineered. This is just a picture of a desire of the town. And we would want to do a crossing treatment at Coffin. And then again, like Wayne said, we would have to do, a treatment at the end at Chase to get the, to end for the ADA accessibility. So
What's the total length of that roughly? Is that maybe 3/4 of a mile?
about that, yeah. So it would be a nice safe routes to school project. With the grading and everything, if you're probably over $1 million for that sidewalk. So
should, just policy wise, if the town applies for the, the bigger grant, should somehow it be the people are gonna say, well, you're building you're creating a sidewalk here, right in the middle of a sidewalk desert. So there is no sidewalk on either side. So do we want to incorporate a longer sidewalk to Coffin and Chase to make it seem like there's a reason to do this? I'm just trying to play the grantsmanship game. Do they want to know that would be the town's ultimate goal, or they wouldn't care?
I think they would want some discussion on connecting that sidewalk towards the sidewalk that's in town already as a future project, maybe through another grant. They understand that these things have to be done in steps.
Okay.
Liz, one question I have. So if the focus for a Safe Routes to Schools grant would be the kind of zoomed in, geographic scope, which has been the primary focus of your work. I think we've talked a little bit in the past that if the town wanted to petition for that larger vision from Chase to Coffin as part of the TIP, regional transportation planning process, would it be worth the investment for the town to consider taking that to a higher degree of engineering, whether, true conceptual engineering or even to 25% design, in the interest of having a real project that it could then advocate for through the TIP, even knowing that's a, multi-year long-term process? Or would that be kind of like a waste of money for the town?
I think that you would find out pretty quickly if you were able to get a Safe Routes to School grant that could, at least address the immediate concern. And then if that is granted, then the town can have a discussion on whether they desire to put that sidewalk along Main Street farther. And then, because the funding for that you'd want to have funding secured through the 25% design phase when you're heading towards the TIP. You don't have to have that money to get you on the TIP. That's usually just a more detailed concept plan. So I think I would do it in stages to save the town a little money until it was absolutely necessary.
Well, I guess that's maybe really my question is, what level of investment should the town anticipate in design, either conceptual or higher level, to have an actual project that it can effectively advocate to get onto the TIP? Because we've been sending letters to the MVPC for as long as I've been here, and probably longer, about the general premise of getting sidewalks in this location, but without having a project or any semblance of engineering or cost. It's not a serious request. So, if the town through this board was to go to the voters, or I guess it would be to the voters to appropriate funds to take, a design for a longer sidewalk, they wouldn't want to go ask the voters to put their tax money toward that unless they felt that was truly a good investment of funds.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the first step would be to do a more detailed concept and look at, I don't know that you would need the full survey and design. Could do a more detailed concept and enable you to get a better estimate. And then that would be the start to the project need and the project scope to get you on the TIP.
Now, would that get us as far as knowing whether we're talking about the north or the south side of the road in response to the resident concerns about, erosion or destabilizing the hillside there? Because there's hills on both sides of the road.
Yeah.
Right. So that would get you to that, whether it was actually even feasible or not.
So Liz, can this sidewalk that we're proposing to Coffin Street and to Chase Street, that would not be, is that too large of a project for Safe Routes to School?
We'd have to do a little bit better of an estimate, because I think the cap for Safe Routes to School is 2 million. So depending on the earthwork, and I don't know if the state would want to you'd have to give a justification on why it's not a shared use path. So, and 10 feet wide, because we're not going to be able to put sidewalk and bike lanes on both sides of the street due to the geometry. So I think it might be a little too much for safe routes to school.
How about if we only did one side, if we only picked Coffin Street or Chase Street, we reduced the project to keep them to 2 million, then that'd be less money that we have to.
Yeah,
Sure, I just don't want to leave money on the table. If we can max at 2 million, and we do this project for 1.1, for example. And we're not going to get another bite of this apple probably soon again, you know, like you gave it to us this time around, hopefully.
right.
Is this our chance to see what can we get for $2 million to get us a sidewalk down the top?
Right. So you'd probably want to go to the sidewalk to the west, because that's closer to the sidewalk that's already existing. And then the benefit of the safe routes to school is that the state will design it for you. So the town doesn't have to expend any design funds. The state will kind of take it from this concept and move it forward if the grant is given. So that's why I'm suggesting that we like wait and try and, maybe the grant request extends the sidewalk as far to the west as we can towards the center of town, and maximize the request, and then the state will take it from there.
I just don't want to ask for a small one, but 1.1 million. We have the engineers coming from MassDOT, like, oh, by the way, we want this sidewalk to Coffin Street. And they're like, well, you should have told us that, 3 months ago, with your application. We would have had, and I know dealing with MassDOT's good at times and challenging at times. And I just want to be upfront and clear with them on that. And I know, say if it's $2.3 million to get it there, towns have contributed money towards the design. I know Newburyport put a lot of money into their safety school because of the sidewalks were not covered, if I understand, on that project, correct? So the town had to put their money in for
Right.
So if we're really close and we're $200,000 short, obviously we don't want to start a whole project up if we're 90% there. If the town needs to come up with $160,000 to make the connection, then going back to this 7 years later on a tip for $700,000, I'd rather just get the two. If it's 2.2, we go to the voters and ask for $200,000 to make it work. Then go to the voters and ask for $750,000 in 2038. And try. So I think we should try to go for make the project $2 million. And get what we can out of this. Don't leave any money on the table, because if we go on the tip, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
For a
it's
while.
a long time.
That's all I'm saying.
You
We
are
could put it on the
correct,
tip,
yeah.
even if they supported us and liked us and thought it was great, we'll probably still be 4 years out, 5 years out. 6 years
Oh,
out. So,
but yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's all I'm thinking is we try to get them
No.
out. Cool. Go as far as we can, and then we, the town, gonna have to take the rest.
Right. I agree, because the worst comes to worst, they say, no, we can't do that. It's not feasible. It's not ADA compliant to go down that hill. We'll just give you what's in front and they'll fund that section. But so I would agree with you. I'd say, let's go for as much as we possibly can.
So in that case, we could go both ways then, right?
Well, it might be 4 million, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So
why
is there any
can't you ask?
problem with asking for too much? I mean, if they just say, you're capped at 2 million.
Yeah.
Then
I
we
mean,
decide.
I think we could ask in the application, and well, our estimate will say 3.2 million. The left does it, don't you know the estimate, but
Yeah.
that, maybe the town could contribute money to it. Obviously, if we build this all at once, it'll be less expensive. We're building it in 3 pieces.
That's
Safe routes to
true.
school, sidewalk on east, sidewalk on west, it's gonna be 3 projects, 3
Yeah.
different contracts. If we had a monster contract, with one contract on board, even if the towns are fronting some of the money, it's worth asking, but I think Liz might be right. It might be, $1 million for the sidewalk, another $1 million for the intersection. Maybe that gets us close. I think the sidewalk's going to be a challenge with earth.
Yeah.
We got problems on both sides. I walk both. I drove really slow.
I
I don't want to say I
can
walked. I drove very slow on both sides of the road. And this side makes sense. And then no, the other side. No, the other. So I switched sides 5 times. Right? And I don't know really. I think the side that this is the best, not the worst. besides. the
You know, the
pits.
problems too, I mean, some places slope up.
Yeah.
And the others, and then you get down to the bottom of the dip, and it slows down. and
You can't win.
Yeah.
You can't win. And drainage is gonna be an issue too, Liz, because right now it's running off the road. We add a sidewalk in, now we've now got to trigger everything else, right? Past God and catch basins.
Yep.
Yucky, I don't want to think about it, really, honestly. That's where
Yeah,
the money's gonna be, you know, there's a lot of knowledge.
yeah, this is gonna be a tricky one. Outside of this little area, I think it'll be tricky, but you know, when it goes through feasibility at Safe Routes to School, they'll be able to figure it out.
Okay, so Angus, what are we?
Well, so Liz, I heard you talk about, incorporating the comments to date. Obviously, any comments the board may offer in the next few minutes beyond what's already been discussed. It sounds like you are ready to come back in 3 weeks to kind of have a final that the board would then basically accept as the final report. And then we would get our closeout. We just have till June 30th. We've got to close it out formally with the Commonwealth because of the state. So it sounds like it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of changes other than incorporating the comments to date and emerging with a single favored concept plan.
Correct.
So on the basis of what you've heard and the written comments received and tonight, do you have the direction you need or to the board, or are there comments that you haven't offered yet that you want Liz to have before her team produces the final preferred concept?
When do you?
Oh,
Do you want 3?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, I think.
So we're unanimous on 3.
Great. Sounds good.
And I have no objection to shifting, you know, the crosswalk somewhat farther to the east as was requested, you know, for equestrian purposes. It's actually better, you know, the more we keep people off the roadway, you know, in a completely protected area.
Excellent. We'll move forward with that then and finalize it. And I will see you at the end of the month with the final plan and report.
Hey, just 2 things briefly, Liz. One, so 3 doesn't include the sidewalk going up the Page driveway. We're good with that.
Right.
Right, okay. And secondly, Liz, before you jump off, make me host again, because I think that'll happen automatically, but I'd hate for you to inadvertently end the meeting because you're still the host.
Oh, we can do that.
So you should be able to click on my picture and say make host, or actually I might even be able to say reclaim host.
There.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thanks. Didn't want any snafus.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, so we'll put that back on for June 27th.
That's gotta get done then, because this is the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Turns into a pumpkin.
That is correct. Yeah.
So is there a lot of paperwork that needs to be done with the report? or-
No, because it's an earmark, it's not, I consider it a grant because it's kind of,
Yeah.
but it's not a formal, the only prior one we got was with the modest improvements we made to the Page Playground, which was a $20,000 earmark. And we just sent a memo with some pictures and then basically formally closed out what we had done. So Wayne and I can work together on that. But we would send them a copy of the final report.
Is there anyone here that's towards agenda items further down, which
I am not here on the agenda items further down. I came tonight because I applied for finance committee, opening the finance committee, and I traded emails. with
Yeah,
James
I had said
and-
the 27th.
What's that?
I had said the 27th was when it was going to be taken up.
we had traded emails for June 6th. And then I sent a note back that we confirmed on the 6th, so 27th of June.
Yeah. If I was not, so hold on, what was your name, sorry?
Daniel.
It's Dan, yes. Right. Okay, if that was the case, I didn't see that.
I would love it if you could bounce down to H, which is no kind all access trail initiative, if that's. Discussing that.
Yeah, I sent it to you.
June 27th?
Yeah, I had just,
On
yeah,
the second at 9:30 in the morning, I sent you something saying the 22nd.
yeah, so I met with Archie on, to go over the draft agenda, and it did have it on the draft agenda, but because we had two applicants, one opening. He said to put it on for the 27th to make all the appointments, so that the board wouldn't have two people for one opening, because at that time we didn't know that we would have an additional opening July 1st. We kind of knew, but we didn't know in writing. And I know Archie didn't want the board to take any action that might be perceived as pushing someone out who hadn't formally given notice that they were giving up their seat yet. So that was the rationale. So I'd sent Jim a note either that night or the next morning, asking him to let you know and the other applicant know it would be the 27th. So it sounds like.
Yeah.
When they're getting received, Dan is here, and there are now two known.
There are now two known.
There are now two known.
So it's three.
and it is-
No, well, two known.
Yeah.
Oh, Gary
That's my
hasn't, he hasn't
understanding.
given it, right?
Yeah. He
Oh,
called
yes?
me, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Officially?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, all right.
So,
It's not on the agenda.
well, it's something reasonably unanticipated.
Yeah, you could vote to add it to the agenda. Yeah,
We are talking about committee appointments.
yeah.
You have the, the application.
I'm not on, because I'd have to open my email. Which I'm told when I open my email, it's on screen for the local.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I can't figure out the 27th,
Oh, that's, okay.
or it would be on the screen on the 27th.
So I move to add consideration of Daniel Ennis for finance. Committee. That's-
Second. So Dan, I think it's great. I was in FinCom for a really, really long time. It's great. You'll learn about all sorts of stuff that you had no idea you were interested in, like water meters. It's like how they work and how much they cost and all sorts of really inconsequential things like that. But you really learn how the town works. So it's good.
Yes, I was expecting that to be part of the process, to learn how it works. I've lived in town for 30 years and attended many of the town meetings and go through the monthly, or not the monthly, but go through the docket of items that you vote on. And after the warrant, thank you, after you figure it out that, okay, the FinCom is making the recommendations and doing the prep work, you understand how, you begin to understand how the policies and how the process works.
And it is, people think because most of the things on the warrant are in the week, but people think most of the things in the warrant were, everybody's approved all of them, so that nobody's actually turning anything down, and that's actually not the case. Usually the things that get turned down, you learn about them, but they don't end up on the warrant. You don't see them. So that's where the sort of the real critical decisions are, the things that just don't even make the cut. So there's a lot of effectiveness that people don't even see.
Now, So living in town here, raised kids, they graduated, they moved on, but we're still here, we're gonna stay here. But I did this in one of the churches in Newbury Park that we attended, and we ran the trustees, chair of the trustees, and our job was to budget, staff, and basically make sure all the funding of the church and its different operations and committees were effective. You learn everything about how it works, and I'd like to volunteer the time to do it here as well in this town.
Great.
There's a lot to be said, to be done, and I'm a hands-on person. I love to understand how things work, and that would be, I think, how I can best help with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sent it to all.
Thank you.
We clearly, the custom working numbers.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do numbers for a living, so
Yeah.
it's, I don't do all the formal budgets, but I play with numbers and spreadsheets all day long. I think I could find my way around. I looked at one of the budgets, one of the agenda meetings for preparing the warrant. A lot of details in there. But I'm sure the conversation happened behind the scenes. It's much more valuable than just the.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot that doesn't make it, prime, isn't ever visible public, right?
Well, and just, I mean, a lot of it's visible publicly in public meetings. They're just not televised and no one pays attention. I mean, that's the thing. Those FinCom meetings, they cover a huge amount of ground. And I think the people that, do show up and do pay attention are, find, wow, there's a lot, but it's not behind the scenes per se. It's just not something
I guess
that.
I didn't imply that, it's just that nobody attends.
Right.
Yeah, don't listen to anything he just said.
If a tree falls in the forest, no one hears it.
So, yeah, if there's openings, yeah. then
Yeah, well, I-
time into it.
Move, that we appoint, David Ennis to.
Daniel.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Daniel Ennis to FinCom,
June 30th, 2024.
okay, for a position, that runs until June 2020.
Second.
It'll be beginning today.
It's currently open, so.
They do have a meeting on June 30th. Yeah.
That's for a line transfer.
Yep.
So do we need to do two steps like we did?
Well, no, I think.
No, because this is it would be filling out the current term of the seat
Which is through.
through 2020.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Thanks, Dan.
It was easier than expected, huh?
Well, not really.
Once again, once you got on the list.
It's
Sorry,
you gotta
what
wait
was the
for it
second?
early.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Second.
Sure, thanks.
Not sure.
Oh, yeah, so Jim, did you talk about it sworn in all?
So I'll send you an email. Look out for my email. With offices open till 4:30 every day except Fridays till 12. So you can stop in and get sworn in,
Okay,
and I'll send you a packet with all the information you need to fill out and get back to me.
awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
All right, see you around. Have a good day. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you wanted to talk about the.
Well, yeah, I see the no facts on there.
That's your. I make a motion to move item H up to the next. Next discussion. Second. Favor? Aye.
Do you have what page? Do you happen to have page number?
Let's see. Yeah, I can. Begins on page 55. So basically, where we are in the process with the scope is we're through the site analysis, concept development, and have not yet scheduled or held the public meeting. Obviously, there have been a number of public meetings leading up to getting to this point with the meetings that the designer had with each of the various boards and commissions and committees. But the scope called for a single kind of public meeting to bring people together around a concept plan as kind of a working meeting to get input on that, and then to take that feedback to produce a more fully rendered concept plan, and to use that as a basis of cost estimating to presumably seek other funding or grant funding to actually implement the plan, probably in phases. So the designer is ready to move forward to basically take the input that she's received and produce a plan for the purpose of putting that on the table in a public working meeting. And has asked for kind of the green light to do that. I haven't given her that green light yet because I wanted to, based on, some of the correspondence from about a week and a half ago, it didn't feel like we were one meeting away from having a concept that people agreed on. It's hard to say because there's not been a concept shared. So how do you know until it's shared what kind of feedback you get? So, I do think we probably ought to kind of stay the course, if you will, with the scope that we have, meaning to authorize the designer to take the sketch drawing and build that out more fully. There was a lot on, the pen and paper or pencil and paper sketch that was shared that was not the concept. I mean, it was a subset, not the big picture, and it didn't have a lot of the notes that are part of the idea. So I do think it makes sense to see that more fully realized and put on the table, and to invite together the various stakeholders for a working meeting to provide input on that. But that's one thing I wanted to discuss with the board tonight, is whether you feel we should continue with that as scoped or go in a different direction. And then also the question about kind of management of the process, whether that should rest with basically the board through my office, or whether that should rest elsewhere, such as the Open Space Committee, which had been the initial requester for the CPC funds, or otherwise.
So just refresh my memory, where did the impetus for the whole project come from? Brad presented it, but
he was not part of the Open Space Committee.
so I'm a little confused, like who wants this the most? I guess that's the one.
So it was submitted under John Dodge's signature, but Brad wrote it and did all the work. But when I spoke to Patricia Reeser, obviously on the Open Space Committee, she said that as far back as the 1990s, that a former open space plan had stated as a specific objective an all-access trail at Mill Pond. I haven't been able to dig out that old document, but obviously I take her word for that. So she said the Open Space Committee has had this as a priority for more than 20 years.
The challenge is that this particular proposal, was not brought forward by the committee, brought forward by one.
Well, it was brought forward with the signature of the chair of the committee.
But at a subsequent CPC meeting, he came forward and said that this is not something that he was prepared to manage. So I'm not sure if that is.
Who said that?
John Dodge,
John
the
said
chair of the committee. So I just, if one of the options is to have the Open Space Committee run with it, fine,
Mhm.
or at least a conversation.
Yeah.
about whether they're ready.
Okay, so I didn't have that underlying.
I mean, clearly, it's not something that your office should take over. Really.
Well, I agree with that. But on the other hand, like I said in my note to Patricia, I think if a committee, whether for this project or any project, is managing a vendor contract, that vendor is, from a business standpoint, is looking to my office as the kind of either whether I'm formally signing the contract or not, I need to make sure that the work is within scope. And so one thing I don't want to have happen is if another committee, open space or otherwise, was to just run with it and start adding meetings and adding things that are out of scope, because the vendor may or may not tell them, they're going to call me, and then I'm right in the middle of it anyway. So that's why I said
The other thing is, it's all, the whole thing getting input from 4 different bosses is not fair to the vendor.
That's right. Yeah, it puts them in a tough spot. Now, in this particular case, part of the scope is facilitation and consensus building. So that's kind of part of the work. But what I'd said in my note to Patricia was, even if a different entity was kind of managing it, that it would need to be in alignment with kind of my office, because if, let's say, meetings are it'd be necessary to calibrate the timing of the project with the availability of other resources whose participation will be necessary to ensure full input. My office, DPW, public safety, conservation, et cetera. Because, for a concept plan to get to where it's kind of ready for prime time, you got to have public safety involved. You got to have DPW kind of involved. And so one of my initial concerns with the scope, going back to the very beginning, the first draft scope that I got called for all of these public meetings to take place in January and February. And that was based on direction Brad had given to Trent. And that got to me in early December. I said, January and February, like, we're kind of all hands on deck with the budget and the town meeting warrant, among the 100 other things we do every day. So that was never realistic. They extended it to May. I always thought that was still a little bit accelerated, given all the other things that go on in this town from January to May. It's not like this is the only project. And if you're really trying to get consensus and get people's buy-in, even to have the bandwidth, for this board, like we had to schedule a special meeting for this, shoehorned into a lot of other things. And
So what's the, trying what's the rush? What, there's no reason we have to, it's not like the tech project. We don't have to spend the money by June, right?
Correct.
So what's the hurry?
I agree. I mean, I think, we could kind of press pause. I mean, on the other hand, the designer's done what she's hired to do. So I want to try to, but I think if we told her we're going to pause this for a period of time and then restart it, I think she'd be fine with that. I know she would. I talked to her about it, but.
So she's completed task 2, is that correct?
Yes, hasn't fully rendered it.
Okay, with 2 to be done.
Well, so she presented a couple of different drawings at the meeting with staff about 4 or 5 weeks ago. She had 2 different ideas and then kind of synthesized those.
And that was a sketch that went to see.
Correct. Yeah. But that's, as you know, the bigger vision includes the walk around to the south of the pond and the viewing area looking north. That sketch didn't capture any of that, and it didn't capture any of the detail of that subset, namely that, if that lower driveway was removed, that would remain drivable and passable by public safety. There'd be either a bollard or a gate, because that was really important, that public safety retain access all around the building, as well as emergency access to the water. The lack of a turnaround, as it's shown on that sketch, would be a real concern. You can't just have a dead end into a parking area and have a fire truck or an ambulance or even a regular vehicle have to back out. There were concerns about the turning radius into that. Is that too sharp a left to get up behind the cabin? There were concerns and it's a conceptual plan, so this wouldn't necessarily be reflected, but there were concerns expressed at the CPA meeting about whether the septic could support the weight of a fire truck going over it. So there's a lot of things that have been put on the table that the designer hasn't had the opportunity, hasn't been given the green light to like fully articulate that concept. So
Okay, but the meeting with town staff
that has occurred. Yeah.
Okay. So then we're at task 3, which is the public.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we're to pause, we just be pausing for further public presentation.
I guess part of my concern is what was sent around was a, hand-drawn sketch. It was not endorsed by anybody. It was, and yet it was responded to as if it was a proposal.
Yeah.
I don't think that was fair. I don't think that was in the spirit of this process, which is an iterative visioning process. But that gave me a sense that at least some number of people would respond in that way. And that makes me feel like, well, we shouldn't bring something forward till it's ready for prime time, even though I think that kind of undercuts the whole purpose of a visioning. I mean, you need people working in good faith, getting together, sharing ideas. And I think there's some defensiveness around this, and that I think is very unhelpful to a process like this. And I think if we, put a big effort into it, we could probably get through that. But you guys know just as well as I do what we have on our desks in the next 60 to 90 days or 120 days, or pick your time horizon. We got 50 other initiatives that are much more urgent. And I hate to see more time be diverted away from those other things that really need the time. So, we didn't ever choose the timing of this initiative. It came from one, like you said, one individual. And it wasn't until probably a year later that it was said at a public meeting, oh, the town manager's doing this. It's like, I didn't, given it a good effort, but to do this properly, it's a major effort.
Yeah.
Just as it's been over the last couple of weeks, it's diverted a lot of time from other things that need time.
So if this was put on pause, how long should we put on pause for?
Well, I think a bigger question to me is what's the right entity to kind of run point on this initiative. I do think there's got to be alignment with this board, not just because of logistics and like bandwidth issues, but also because you are the chief elected body, you are the owners of the land. And so if there's a process, I think it's important that you all be having some input as to where it's going, and that it doesn't produce something that's out of line with what you as a board envision.
Yeah.
I think you have to have some
Yeah, I have, some basic concern about, another, and, say, whether the open space or any other, committee taking over primary responsibility at this point, because nobody else, if there's a question that requires a commitment by the town, nobody can do that, other than really you or Wayne, or somebody who's in a role that is able to make commitments. Open space can't do that.
There we go.
Sure.
I don't know pond board too. And there are some.
If you just so you can,
Oh,
just so people
yeah.
from home can hear.
Couple of developments that haven't been mentioned yet is that Williams and Sprague just finished a comprehensive plan showing all the wetlands and delineating that aspect of it. I sent Angus a missive this week where one of our watchdogs who spends a lot of time at Mill Pond observed that people were parking right along the edge of the water, which is something that we've tried to discourage with some signage, but it's not effective. And people are fishing all around the pond, including the dog and horse wading area, and leaving both fishing line and hooks behind, which are hazardous. she also said that one of the swans, I'm not a fan of swans on Mill Pond, that they drive out other wild waterfowl, but nonetheless, apparently one of the swans was observed with a hook caught in its bill. And did I know any wildlife rehabilitator who could go and rescue the swan? So I brought that to Angus. And finally, the dike, the southernmost separation from Mill Pond to that second body of water there is in really tough shape. It's eroded over the course of years, and now it's, you know, probably this wide at the top of it, and there's gouges cut into it on both sides. So that needs attention sooner than later. So I don't think that can wait for the whole all-access trail aspect to be worked out, or moving the roads, or eliminating parking along the water's edge. But these are things that need to be addressed.
So do you think we're at a logical place to hit pause and scope, or would it be good to get to the public meeting and then let the consultant go away and work on it? Or?
I think that the latter, I think, would be better. I mean, I feel like, you know, she's heard from everybody. She's taken detailed notes at every meeting. She's got a concept in her head. It's not fully articulated, but I do think it would be nice to give her the green light to do that, to have a meeting, to get some, you know, and I think that if the select board hosted a meeting like that, I think there's a better prospect of getting, you know, broad participation. And then, yeah, get a lot of input, take a lot of notes.
Do the public meeting
Yeah.
too,
Go, yeah,
task 3,
Yeah.
okay.
and then, I mean, she can go off and do concept development after she gets the input, right? I mean, she can complete the
Mhm.
scope once she gets the public meeting.
That's right,
Without a
yeah.
lot of input from anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think if the public meeting, and it says public meeting, and I think, you know, it really ought to be working session or working meeting. Because I think it's kind of, you know, we're not going to have a concept that everybody stands up and cheers. That's just not going to happen in this location. So I think, yeah, if we go forward with that, and then see how far we are from consensus. If it seems like there's something that's broadly supported, but not every last person, that might be as good as we're going to do in this location.
Okay. Incidentally, I did take a walk around the lake at Wood College, which was outstanding.
Mhm.
A lot of people. It was a weekday, and I think college was not in session, but there were still people walking there. It was not in terms of, it looked like they had to move some dirt around, and there were a few wetlands crossings, I noticed, but and it was gravel and quite, but you would say it was part of the. It wasn't like you put an interstate along the way. It was very nice.
So I think that, you know, if that's the direction we go, I do think the timing of it ought not to be June. It ought not to be 3 weeks from tonight, which is
No.
way too much else to do.
So should we standalone meeting, you think?
I think it ought to be a standalone meeting. And we could look at something in July or August. I know that's not a great time because a lot of people are.
Some people will be here.
Mhm.
So isn't there a period where we have 3 weeks off?
That's between now and the 27th. Yeah.
So we have the 27th, 11th, 25th,
3 meetings in August.
8
About the 25th.
of July.
As a separate meeting or part of?
Oh, okay.
No, they're looking for a separate meeting.
Oh, you want separate, sorry. Those were your meeting dates. So separate meetings,
So
not
maybe what's the date in July between the two meetings?
18th. And then the 1st of August and the 15th of August.
You guys have any- would you put it in now? Oh, yeah, like a world traveler.
So Rick, I think you said earlier there's 3 meetings in August. There's not. There's the 8th and the 22nd. Because they rejiggered. I don't know if that was the meeting
Okay.
you were not at.
I think
But yeah, basically they,
Actually, is it, I thought I confirmed that.
I saw it in the minutes, yeah, that's where I just wrote it down today.
I kind of confirmed that was on my
Oh, yeah.
schedule, and that was in my schedule. And,
oh, okay, 8th, 22nd and 29th.
Right.
That's-
Oh. And then there's not one on the 6th? Or is there one on the 6th as well?
I think it was, so
I
you did
think
the
there's
29th,
not-
skip to the 12th. Because the 6th is
Oh,
an election.
okay, I got my schedule's wrong.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't want to have one the day after.
I
Okay.
don't want to have one on a primary.
That was the issue.
All right, yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay, I remember that now.
That sounds.
I gotta update my.
All right, so July or
We could do it, if we do in August, then we could have a meeting every Monday in August.
But it doesn't have to be a Monday either, does it?
Angus, I remember you had.
I'm gone the week of the
Some time
15th.
off.
Yeah, I'll be in Cape Cod the week of the 15th.
Yeah, okay, so we'll be there. So, yeah, well, it was like July 18th, right? Okay.
You know, or thereabouts. I mean, we could pull people, you know, hearing.
check it as well. She may not-
Right.
Any date.
That's right, yeah. So, but I think, so we'll aim for something between July 18th and August 18th, sometime in the mid-July to mid-August. I'll give her the green light to more fully render her concept, and I think that'll be, my guess is she's gonna prefer to present that at the meeting rather than send it around ahead of time. Just, that's been her MO
There might
to
be
this
more
point.
participation.
I think just so people don't come into a meeting with pre-formed, yeah.
If we get that. Yes.
People are interested.
Okay, so we're gonna grab a date sometime in the latter half of July. it sounds
So when
like.
are we
We're not-
gonna set a
we're
date?
not gonna set the 18th.
I mean, we could pencil in the 18th, but we got to check with Trent, and, you know, I do think it's, you know, it's worth at least putting an ear to the ground if that's like a terrible date for,
Yeah, no,
you know. so-
I don't.
So maybe
disagree with that.
check with the open space committee, Brad.
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
board committee, see
Yeah.
if that works for them.
I think that makes good sense.
The
Yeah.
sooner we get in their schedules, the
Yeah.
less likely that something else gets put in there.
All right. And I will just, this is just a housekeeping thing, but Trent's contract has June 30th, so I'll just carry that forward. We'll just extend that date, but the sunset date on this is not till June 30th of 2023. So
That's
we do
what I was
have,
asking.
yeah, we have plenty of time there.
Mr. Grand Marshal, are you here for something specific there?
Yeah, I wish I would probably some kind of discussion on article, me, probably,
On the zoning. Yeah. The letter I.
Item I.
You want to take that out of order?
Yes. I make a motion to move up item I to now. Second. Article 11.
Oops, with the audio.
Okay, so I just wanted that where this is, time's ticking and the, I want to wait till.
Excuse me.
So where the approval of the article authorizing disposition of the building was basically implicitly tied to a zoning amendment. If there is to be a zoning amendment brought to the fall town meeting, a couple of things would need to happen. One, in my observation, either the select board or the planning board would need to decide to sponsor an amendment. Yes, there's an option for a citizen petition, and that's possible, but I think realistically, it means that either this board or the planning board or both supports an amendment. So that's going to take some amount of time to work through what might that amendment look like. And so Wendy had made the good suggestion at the last meeting to designate a member of each board as kind of a working group that could start to advance this between meetings so we can make progress more than every other week. So town planner is going to talk that over with the planning board tomorrow night and hopefully get a planning board designee. She had set out.
Did they even know about this? That they might want to?
It does not sound like she had briefed them on it yet. So.
But it is on the agenda.
No, it's not. She's going to need to add it, but they'll talk about it tomorrow night. So she had sketched out some timelines, taking into account, referral of article, legal ad, and so forth, and public hearing. And I don't know if you guys had a chance. I just this afternoon had forwarded some correspondence from today. I had favored the earlier the better, because I don't want to get into a situation where the warrant is closed with a placeholder article unless we really know what's going to be proposed. And I don't think it's rocket science. I don't think it needs to take a whole lot of time. We just need to get focused on it. So that's really the main thing that's on for tonight's agenda. With regard to the disposition process, if that's the direction the voters set, I would think the goal would be to initiate that immediately after a fall town meeting in the event that zoning was approved. That means getting it all teed up and ready to go so that basically right after a town meeting, it could be put up for bid promptly. So that means doing some of the upfront legal work and getting a bid package together and the historic preservation guidelines. Is that what you were going to? Yeah. So I did talk to Lynn Spencer. That had been part of the scope that she'd been engaged to do leading up to town meeting. She explained to me that she had made the decision not to do that prior to town meeting because at some point during the process, she felt that it didn't feel like that was going to work because of the zoning issues. The board hadn't yet kind of linked it to this intent of a future zoning amendment. And she said she didn't want to spend the town's money to draw up historic preservation guidelines if it didn't seem like that was going to work.
Okay.
If the zoning were to change, there's a greater prospect it would work. So she said she is fully prepared to draw up those historic preservation guidelines. I explained to her that because that's funded from the CPA administrative funds, I didn't feel comfortable just saying, yeah, go ahead and do it. So I said I was going to talk to the board tonight, and Wendy in particular as chair of the CPA or CPC. It is within scope, the way the scope's written, it does kind of strongly suggest it's all going to be done by town meeting. So that's something we can either talk about tonight or talk about offline, but basically, do I authorize her to draw up those historic preservation guidelines under the existing scope? Separately, we do have funding associated with the article that passed. I would not prefer to start hitting that until I need to, because we're going to need that. But those are really the two topics I want to talk about tonight.
So given that it's from the administrative fund, does that expire on June 30th?
I think it does expire. Yeah. And she said she could have them done this month. Now there would, be further work leading toward the fall, whether that's her or another, vendor, however we want to handle that. But yeah, the admin funds are tied to the fiscal year. And I did tell her to submit an invoice for everything she's done up to this point, because she had an invoice, so she's obviously put in some time with the numbers and things.
Not that I'm objecting to it. How is that CPA admin policy?
Well, so that topic came up when the request of CPA went in, and when you read the language about CPA admin funds, it is helping to, and I don't have it memorized, but there is definitely a straight-faced argument for use of admin funds to help get projects basically ready for CPA funding, and where this is a project that had been funded in the past by CPA funds. Actually, the initial work in the summer of 2019, you may recall there was about $5,000 spent initially just to put the CPA funding request together. That was funded by CPA admin funds, and the same question was asked back then. And it's yeah, I don't have it memorized, but it is a legitimate.
Yeah, to advance the CPC proposal.
You need to do a certain amount of administrative background work in order to
And
get.
have your consultants,
Yeah.
design consultants.
But it already is a taxes project in Mexico. This is a totally new project. Is that how you define it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's fine to go ahead with it. I mean, this was the original scope.
Yeah.
It doesn't say.
Yeah. It doesn't say it's delivered by a certain date. I mean, the way it's written, it's kind of seems like it's headed toward town meeting. And when we scoped it back in December, that was the expectation. But the process took a couple of twists and turns, and the zoning, I think, really threw Lynn for a loop, because, understanding that it didn't allow commercial, she basically said that without commercial use, she doesn't feel there is any prospect of getting a
What
bidder.
kind of money are we talking?
Probably under $1,000. I mean, it's a few hours of time.
Yeah.
Does she have the time to do it?
Yeah, she does. Yeah. She said she just finished up a major project, but yeah, she had been pretty busy.
Okay.
That's a critical piece of it.
But as far as the zoning, I think it would be good to have a designee of this board. And I think have you been designated by the board? Okay. Oh, okay. You had made the suggestion, I think. I didn't remember if the board had or not, but I think having some meeting of the minds between a planning board and select board rep, and myself and the town planner, maybe the building inspector, having some kind of idea of how we want to go is going to be good up front, because there are really two ways at least to go about it. I think one way makes sense. We've heard some input from Nick Cracknell, which is different than what I see. And I'd love to sound that out before putting in the time to really put together a more substantial proposal.
So that would include somebody from this board, somebody from the planning board, the planner, and who else would?
Myself, and I think having Sam involved would be good
Yeah.
as well. Maybe even like a meeting, but just something to say, this is one idea. Here's another idea. Maybe there's a third idea that we haven't thought of, and just say what seems to make sense. My thought would be, if we're going to do this, it ought to be to rezone that parcel for commercial use. You know, a different idea that came in through the email, you know, a month or so ago was saying to broaden the allowable uses in residential districts with certain characteristics, including frontage on Main Street within a certain distance of a commercial zone, basically to broaden the allowable uses. That would apply to many properties. To me, that's like, I don't think that's the direction we want to go, but it's not up to me, you know, and it's an idea that came in. So I'd rather, like, before we get into all this, I'd rather just say, what's the idea we're going to invest time to develop, and then go with that.
That sounds like a big, way bigger hole.
That was what I thought. Yeah.
That's the West Newbury boutique home business.
In massage college.
Well, I was sitting on the planning board meeting tomorrow night, if they are to discuss it.
Okay, great. Okay, did you want to comment on something?
No, thanks for moving it.
Okay.
You know, I mean, Dick, if, I did meet with Bob Janes about a week ago. Yeah, and Bob, you know, he did say that he and perhaps others might want to bring a new proposal to the fall town meeting for CPA to basically look to appropriate funds to restore the exterior of the building, leave the interior unfinished. So basically to take what had been bid out 2 summers ago and have a subset of that. So it's basically structural and exterior, leaving the interior undone.
Is that one of the options that Lynn outlined? 825.
Not really, no. Not that, she wanted
She
to.
said the envelope, isn't that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
But hers was like still having heating and those kind of things.
So I'm not sure, you know, if that's something that might come forward as well. But there might be potentially, there are 2 and potentially 3 different tracks that we're following on this project over the next few months. So we need to make sure we've got.
But one of them's already approved at that meeting.
Yeah, but we need to still flesh it out, right? I mean, the vote's one thing, but the work is.
The outside would secure the historical. Historical preservation.
Yeah, in fact, on the historic preservation guidelines, those would be entirely to do with the exterior, not with regard to the interior at all. That's one of the things Lynn said, which I think we knew that all along.
Thanks. Moving it.
Yeah, so I just wanted something on the agenda before, because I think it's been, 2 meetings since town meeting, and something just to say there is going to be a process. And I think a good first step is what Wendy, that you had suggested of what we've talked about. So, and that by the time it gets like onto a public meeting, there's some well-formed idea.
So, does it need to go back to the CPC? I don't think it does.
No,
So Lynn will move ahead and finalize it.
yeah.
Okay, let's go back to E.
Page,
Yes, all the colors.
I like it, Jim.
I told him he needs to give us a legend. It's kind of obvious, but I
I
said
think
a
everyone
legend would
needs
make
to
it.
The red, that's key.
I think that was, I think it was pretty. simple.
Page 29.
I did happen to,
Someone could misinterpret this. because if someone, because it says reappointment question mark, no. That's clearly the person saying, no, they don't want reappointment. Someone could read that to say this, to say that it means someone's intent to not reappoint.
So this is my intent.
Trust me, I've been burned before. But anyway, that's- right?
Our intent.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, like, oh, don't reappoint that person, you know? Red, they're in red, like it.
So to go over this paperwork, Green is, I've spoken with him before, I've
got it.
I received written
understood it.
explanation that they did want to be reappointed. Yellow, I have not heard directly from that person. No, I've heard directly from that person, whether in writing or over the phone, that they do not want to be reappointed.
So do you need to hear directly from the person in order to? I spoke with Molly Hawkins today, and she does.
Yeah, if you could just shoot me a quick email, that'd be great. Just so I can say
You can confirm.
I have heard one way or the other. And just to give you guys a heads up on a couple things, the bandstand co-coordinator, this is a request from Brian, that that Charlie be added to the bandstand co-coordinator position.
What be that?
That an additional person,
Oh,
because it'll lighten the load for him. And Charlie and him have actually Charlie's kind of been shadowing him.
okay.
And he helped do the bandstand stuff this year, and so I think his whole idea is that moving forward, he and Charlie can work together.
Okay.
And do that. For open space.
They stopped in last week. They're very, very good.
I didn't even know there was such a.
Well, there wasn't actually. So when I started, there was on the list, there was a bandstand committee. It only had one name, Brian Young, and he had been reappointed. And it was my second or third year, but I called him up. I said, Brian, because he's great. He does a great job. I called him up. I said, Brian, there's only one of you. Can I just call you the bandstand coordinator? Because there's no charge. There's no committee charge. I said, yeah, that's great. So that's when it became the bandstand coordinator instead of the committee.
Now it's the coordinator.
It's-
Open space, there's a bit of a rejigger. Jessica, who's serving a full term, wants to step down. And Graham, who's serving an associate position, wants to step into that term, and Jessica wants to take his associate seat because Graham is the only person who's on the committee who's said he'd be willing to be chair. So to be chairman, he would need to be a full-time member. So Jessica has offered her resignation for him to take that position, if that's okay with the board.
Excuse me, what is the asterisk mean?
So the asterisk, that is a personal note for me, for people who are serving on other committees. So for example, Patricia her term ends in 2023, but her CPC term could be a 3-year appointment if we chose to. But my suggestion would be make it a 1-year appointment, so all of her terms line up together, so she can come back for one reappointment. So that happens with several people, as you can see with a couple stars. So Elisa Grammer is a good example. So if you decide to stagger her term or the term of the committee that she's on, I would suggest staggering it so it lines up with her other appointments.
So did you look at the CPC bylaw that there's 3-year appointments?
So it's a designation by the committee, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if there was a full term. I didn't see that, but I could be wrong.
I mean, that's in practice, that's how it's done. The committees appoint every year, but when I'm looking at the bylaw, it says it's a 3-year term. So
I thought that was just for the.
Is that for the at-large people or everybody?
I think for everybody, it was set up staggered, but the intent was 3 years.
That doesn't make sense though, if you're on a board or if you're representing some other entity, but it's a member, then, and your term.
Well, that's what Jim's
Yeah,
saying.
right.
Yeah, make sure it lines up.
I mean, somebody could not be elected.
Right.
So let's see, one member, Board of Selectmen, term of 1 year. Community at large member, term of 3 years. Conservation Commission, term of 3 years. Planning Board, 3 years. Yep, you're right. So everything but the Select Board is a 3-year appointment by that entity. So I can coordinate with the appointing and make sure those are staggered. So I'll just, whenever I swear somebody in, we'll just make sure we know when the term ends. Or when they're designated, we can communicate that through writing. But Pat's a good example with the article that we did not end up taking action on at this last town meeting. If we take it up either this fall or we take it up in the spring of next year, I think a 1-year appointment would be fine for her. And in that case, it'll line her up with everything. And then also if it ends up becoming an open space designee seat anyways, then her 1-year appointment would end. It would be fine. Additionally, Angus and I have had conversations about the Memorial Day position. Ilya served his role, and I think he did quite a good job. And the question is, do we want to have a parade, Memorial Day parade committee, or do we want to just have that one designee as we have?
I think so too, but I don't want to be presumptuous with Ilya's time because he agreed to be chairperson and he was really helpful as a volunteer. But I don't want to jump to, unless you've talked to him, I don't know that
He said he'd be willing to do it for another year.
but to be chairperson.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a different role than
Yes.
a potential organizing committee. So I don't want to presume that.
So the committee that we're having somewhat of an issue about, the harbor committee, everybody wants to be on it. Not doing it.
So there's a,
So are we actually looking at appointments tonight?
No,
Okay.
no, but yeah, I mean, I thought, for instance, if there was a committee that this board had certain expectations, either of what issues you'd like to see them tackle, or even number or frequency of meetings, you're the appointing authority. I think it's fully in bounds if you want to give that direction. Historically, I don't believe the board has done that. But if you're not satisfied, or if you'd like to see more, or if you'd like to see a committee focus on certain initiatives that are important to you, I think the appointment process is a natural time to convey that.
Additionally, if you see anyone with a question mark and you know that they do want to serve, have them please contact me, or no, they don't want to serve, so we can keep updating this. There are several people I don't even have phone numbers for. For example, I think on capital improvement, I don't have Julie or Polly's number.
I would like to have the harbor committee come in and tell us what they're doing or not doing, and what happened with the mooring plan and everything else. We don't know what's going on. Well, that's what you.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, we have to reappoint, make some, that conversation. How full the candidate will be.
I think that that's great. I think that's just the kind of thing you ought to be doing in the last meeting of the fiscal year. I think it's really important. We don't have much penciled in for that night.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll fill up, but
The other question I had is on the personnel committee, are we continuing that?
you know, I included that thread because to me, that's an open question. I don't really see the function that, you know, I think if it's, I don't see the function that it performs in this form of government. I think a personnel committee or personnel advisory committee could play a role, but I think you know, where the charge for that goes back to 1999, and it's a fundamentally different situation than it was back then. It doesn't perform the function that's set out in the bylaw, nor has it for many, many, many years. I mean, long before the last 4 years. So
So we disband it, or I mean, what's the appropriate,
let's see,
we're just not appointing? a
I'd
person?
say we just don't appoint instead of getting into the whole process of disbanding it, then you might have to bring a warrant article.
Right, if it becomes relevant at some point again in the future, then.
Yeah, but maybe just, yeah,
I think it's, yeah, it basically it says comprised of the number of, oh boy. Someone posted the personnel policy where the personnel bylaw is supposed to be. Not point fingers, but someone did. So I can't tell you what the bylaw says, but my recollection is it says the select board will appoint, said, you know, whatever number of people it deems fit. But yeah, I wish I had it because
but remember that before we didn't, there was no place for anyone to go with any kind of HR kind of issue. And so we had to have something. And that was sort of it, but it was never, except for a short time, we never really had meetings or did much, no.
Could be, so if we don't appoint anybody to that particular committee. And where's the charge for that committee? Defined?
it's in the personnel bylaw.
Okay, so the bylaw would have to change the charge.
Right, but that's a whole.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we do it now, I'm saying pending it.
Well, it's advisory. I mean, I'll tell you under the bylaw, definitely, and I don't have it, but it's advisory to the board.
Yeah.
So I do think it ought to be, the bylaw ought to be amended, and I see it as a kind of a housekeeping thing. Okay, so good. I know it's not in the town bylaws. Personnel bylaw, there we go. Yeah, it's just a short 2-3 page thing. So to establish fair purpose of the personnel, oh, that's the purpose of the bylaw. So policies. Let's see. Oh, okay. No, it says shall. So responsibility of the board of selectmen. Board of selectmen shall be responsible for the development of a human resources system which meets the needs of the town. Board of selectmen shall appoint a personnel advisory committee to assist in carrying out its responsibility. Personnel advisory committee shall conduct such research and carry out such instructions as the board of selectmen shall direct, including but not limited to review of compensation for employees, benefits, methods of selection of personnel, performance appraisal, and personnel procedures. Personnel advisory committee shall be composed of such a number of members for such periods of time as the board of selectmen shall so determine. Members of the Personnel Advisory Committee may be removed upon majority vote of the Board of Selectmen after notice to the committee member and a public hearing if so requested.
So it's the Town Manager Act put all those
That's right.
same responsibilities on your shoulders.
That's right. Yeah. And, you know, and I put in a huge effort in the first 18 months and more because they hadn't met for 4 years before I started. And when I approached the chair and asked why, she said, well, we're advisory to the Board of Selectmen. They haven't asked for our advice, was the answer I was given. So I put in a huge effort and they had 4 or 5, 6 meetings and every one of those I put together memos, I put together backup, I put together questions that I was looking for support on. No minutes were even taken. No notes were even taken other than notes I took. I'm sitting there saying, if you think I'm writing minutes for your committee, like I'm here because I need, anyhow, a lot's changed since then with the town. But like I said in my email to Lark, I feel like in this form of government, the select board is the personnel advisory committee to my office with the statutory responsibilities that my office has. And I think it's very challenging for another committee. They're not going to have the information they need to know what's going on because a lot of it's, you know, personnel stuff that really shouldn't be talked about in an open meeting. So anyhow, it's.
So to disband it, we have to change the bylaw.
I think the bylaw ought to be changed. Ideally, it would be changed in the context of other updates to more fully, you know, have more consistency in our form of government. So, but it's one of the glaring examples of inconsistency.
Okay, yeah,
But
no,
based on what you,
go ahead.
based on what you just read, we can opt to just not appoint it.
It said you shall appoint, but it also says some sets numbers. And
Exactly, so
yeah,
set number is 0.
yeah.
And I mean,
And also in the context of if we want to change it, let's see what the our report.
Yeah, the call center. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, if you were inclined and
anything about, you know, we can talk about it in that context too. So
you know, I don't know if, you know, if Lark could be persuaded to be appointed as the sole member of the committee with the charge being to advise on what might be a proper and helpful role of a personnel committee in a town manager form of government. That might be a good.
So the committee has done, effectively hasn't accomplished anything for 6 or 7 years.
Many more years than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
For a bunch of years.
Bunch of years, yeah.
So if we just don't appoint anybody right now, we're also talking about possibly a town charter. Which at that point, the personnel committee somehow gets there, whatever that committee could or should accomplish somehow would get worked into a town charter. So, and clearly that could take 2 years, would take 2 years, or more. But seeing as the committee hasn't hasn't functionally accomplished anything for maybe a decade, what's the point in just continuing to appoint people and then have nothing accomplished? You know, and I'm not commenting on the people. It's just the committee isn't, you know, it doesn't really serve a purpose right now. So
And there's no staff support structure to support the operations of a committee like that. So, you know, I'm not, that might be something to take under advisement but yeah, I wouldn't see a logic of reappointing without articulating what it's going to do and how's it going to function, because it's I think it does create some confusion, its existence. Another thing I wanted to, two others I wanted to highlight on here. One, obviously you saw Rob Phillips with River Access expressed not interest. That's, as I'm sure you know, because he has applied to be on FinCom and can't be on multiple things.
Oh, that's
That's
why. I
why.
was like disappointed. Oh.
Yeah, yeah. That committee's meeting tomorrow at 4, so I'll be there for that.
River access.
Yeah. The other one I wanted to make sure you understood was with Bob Janes having expressed that he does not want to be reappointed as the rep to the Eastern District Veterans Affairs. I met with Bob about a week ago, and his rationale is that it's the town's obligation to have a representative on that board. And so he feels it's very important that the town, whether through a member of this board or through myself, go to those meetings so we really understand what they do and what their activities are. So he asked me to express that was his reason for not seeking reappointment.
When you say that.
He wanted more engagement from the board or from my office.
How about other towns manage that?
I don't know. I mean, I assume they
Curious whether
appoint.
that's the norm, that the other reps are also.
No, I don't know that. Do you know that, Jim?
I don't.
No. All right. It would seem it ought to be a veteran.
It's, I would say it's a board appointment, whether you choose to have it be a veteran or someone who is involved or wants to be involved in Veterans Affairs, I think would be. Because if there wasn't a veteran available, you still have to have a representative on the board.
Oh, we do.
Well, you don't have to, you could leave it vacant.
Yeah, I don't know anything about.
It's like a regional board, it's like the Whittier School or Pentucket. That we are one of several representatives on the board. And actually, it's one of several boards out there that exists. So we're part of the one that involves Ipswich and Rowley and Newbury. But in fact, as I found out doing a little research about it, there's another one that's with Merrimack and Newburyport, and Salisbury. So if we chose, we could also see which one's better for us as a town.
Oh, really? Oh.
Because the only reason I know this is because Wenham left our district to join the Gloucester district. And so I had to figure out where they went. And so it turns out that there's a separate veterans district just to our north and east.
So the
Or
other.
should we advertise for some, that's something that we need to have. We don't, I would think we want to have someone there, and so.
We're expending resources.
Like, put out a call for someone that might want to do that.
The other communities currently, and I agree with that. Jim, you said the other communities, it's Newbury and Ipswich, or
Let me pull up the full list for you.
Essex, Georgetown, Newbury, Rowley. But there's more than that.
No, that's it.
That's all?
That's it.
I thought it was like 14.
No. Just those 6. So Essex, Georgetown, Ipswich, Newbury, Rowley, and West Newbury. Others have left, like I said.
Wow.
Yeah.
There
So
used to be more.
most recently it was Wenham that left. They're now with the Gloucester Rockport district.
My primary contact is with Karen, the veterans agent, who I am in touch with pretty regularly. She's been helpful in some things, but things like the
I thought
Memorial
the
Day.
district was bigger than that.
Yeah, I could swear it was in terms of like the budget
I
allocations.
remember talking to her.
Yeah, I thought it was like 12 or 14.
I looked at it. Groveland has their own. Middleton and all of them are kind of centered around their area. It's very much a segmented.
Huh.
Like
Okay,
this
so I've
region.
got interesting. Okay, so I got the board of directors. There's a rep from Essex, a select person from Georgetown, a select person from Ipswich, select person from Newbury, select person from Rowley,
Oops.
A rep from Wenham and a rep from West Newbury. So of the
rep
7,
From Wenham is no longer there.
oh, okay, so that's outdated. So of the 6, looks like, what,
Us and Essex.
4 are select people.
So I wonder if those select board
Are better.
members are veterans or. Oh,
I could see if Karen could come to the next meeting by Zoom. I know she'd be happy to if she's available. She's generally very accessible, but sometimes like the Memorial Day Parade, she was already committed to a different community because it's a
so
regional.
she's met with us here before once or twice.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think that'd be good. I mean, if other towns have a select board member and we're not, I can see where.
Yeah, I don't know if we're opposed or not.
She's always going to be happy for an opportunity to talk about who they are and what they do. Whether that date and time works is something different, but if she's available, I'm sure she'd be happy, especially by Zoom. It's not a big ask. I don't know their meeting schedule, but I'm happy to go to a meeting here and there. I just don't want to get spread too thin.
Yeah, you're already pretty.
No,
Yeah, it's spread
You
pretty
don't
thin.
have to do it.
Yeah.
I would be glad to do it for that.
Oh, more or less. Any other boards and committees that
I mean, I threw in the info about the cemetery, and you probably scratched your head. I know Archie did.
No, I think that's.
It's
a long-standing issue.
it is a longstanding issue, and I stumbled on it. And anyhow, I thought, this isn't something you can do now. This would be a bylaw, but I wanted to at least float the topic. Is that something you want to consider at a future town meeting to potentially bring forward
So
some kind of cemetery
who
commission?
actually owns, I looked at the assessor's cards on my map for the, I didn't look at depth, but I've looked at them in brief, cemeteries in town. On my map, and it's not clear to me who actually owns these cemeteries themselves.
Well, I'm talking about the public ones, not the privately owned ones.
Well, the public, like the one on Bridge Street, that's.
Yeah, they're all private.
Yeah.
Part of the open space plan, I have to look that up and figure out who owns it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have that somewhere.
Okay. Well, okay, so I guess I've heard speculation from a couple of people over time that, the town should somehow try to pull this all together, so there's some central.
I can't imagine who said that.
I've heard it from more than one person, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah.
And they could make it.
Yeah,
So-
I think it's a worthwhile conversation. I think.
So
When you talk about the ideas are good, do we really want to get, do we need to do this?
Well, I don't know, I just,
Sure.
think, I'm hoping I fall overboard. Or something like that. So you won't have to worry about it. But, when you say the public cemetery, so there's the Quaker cemetery.
Correct. And then the Poorhouse Lane are the two.
Oh, okay. Sure, so they're not active cemeteries.
Correct. Yeah. No, active cemeteries is a whole other, no, that's a whole other thing. That's, yeah.
They still require maintenance, right?
And there's some legal obligations that I think, we're fortunate to have a resident who's really done all the groundwork. But for the longer term, is that something that we as a town are accountable for things? Should we have some entity that's charged with focusing on that?
Well,
It's-
I guess, I read through in some detail everything that was there, and it sounded to me as though we were, certainly sort of minimalist management, but as long as we were preventing them from being otherwise purposed,
Mhm.
that we were meeting our minimal obligation.
Yeah, no, I think, so, yeah, we've got a site visit tomorrow with this, that spillway, artichoke spillway.
Yeah.
And, we had the resident letter about would the rising of the water cause the inundation of the cemetery? I think that's something that it's great that she caught that.
Yeah,
But I felt, and I'm sure you guys did, like, whoa, someone else should have caught that. Like we should, and no one did. And kudos to her that she did. But anyhow, it's nothing to decide tonight. I happened to stumble on it in my papers. And since we were on the topic of committees and structure of committees, I thought I'll throw it in there because it came in, right around the end of 2019 and I don't think at that time it got the attention it probably warranted. So. It's nothing to decide tonight. It's something that would require a town meeting vote, so it could be a potential future town meeting article if you wanted to do that.
So why would it, couldn't this select board just appoint a committee?
That wasn't my reading of it, that you'd need to.
I think it does require a select.
It said that a town meeting has
To take it over.
Yeah, town which accepts this and the four following sections may at any town meeting elect by ballot a board of cemetery commissioners. So just something to think about for the future.
Okay, item F. ARPA funds. And Angus has one suggestion on a small amount of the funds that may be an appropriate project and, related to the page school.
Yeah, I think the board you guys probably all remember this. We looked at that so-called SWIG grant with the drinking water and said, why do that if the pipes potentially need replacement? And so this scope would help us understand the extent of potential plumbing replacement that might be
Would that
needed.
Complementary to the federally funded town meeting.
Mhm.
And the town meeting, what we funded at town meeting wasn't intended to cover plumbing, if I'm not correct.
No.
I don't think so.
So this would then be complementary, another potentially another significant piece of the pie when it comes to costs, future costs for page.
Yeah. Now, as you could see in the email thread, they're close to the end of finalizing similar work at Bagnell. We could wait and see that report and see if it's something that we think is what we envision. Sounds like that'll be submitted the end of last week, so we could get our hands on that. But Archie had asked me to put ARPA on the agenda, and this was the only ideas I've got. This or water infrastructure and potentially some stormwater, but there's not really well-defined culvert replacement needs at this point. That could change over the next 6 to 12 months, but sitting here today, there's not a lot of projects that are eligible that are sitting there ready to go.
So tell me if I'm wrong, when I read the thing about water projects, it talked about wastewater project, sewage project, but I didn't see anything about potable water projects. So, am I reading it wrong or?
Not necessarily. I don't know
When
if,
you read, right,
Yeah.
whatever that page is.
yeah.
If you-
Yeah, it talks about eligibility for the clean water or so let's see, water if it's for safe drinking water
Oh, you
revolving
don't think
fund.
that's limited?
No,
Okay.
no, I mean, there's pages and pages of,
Yeah, I thought I've seen another listing of eligible projects, and I thought, sounded like we were kind of in a gray area with some of the water, infrastructure upgrade that have been discussed. But then it also seemed as though relative to the cost for those upgrades, this was a drop in the bucket. No pun intended. So,
the key is to have to meet the revolving fund requirements. Just one for wastewater and one for drinking. But this would just be an engineering.
Okay, you're right. Examples include, but it's not.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah. Yes, it would.
And that would be eligible, not an actual project.
I don't know that. I hope it would, but obviously we would need to confirm that.
Okay, I think we should, at least, let's discuss this for a couple of minutes. And at least it gives us a framework to think about other stuff. Do we feel that that it's okay, yes or no? We feel philosophically it's okay to spend something like ARPA money on, it's designated for the whole town on a water project that is not, obviously, is not the water system. So how do you feel philosophically about
I'm okay with it because the entire town has some fire department. I mean, it'd be different if we're taking money from something else.
the fact that it's the ARPA situation makes it a little different?
That's how I feel.
Okay.
But it's less of an issue for me.
I don't have a problem with it. I look at, I'm a rock. I will not, arguably I'll receive some benefit in that the water pressure with any water distribution system upgrades, the water pressure of fire hydrant on my street will be higher. So I'll receive no benefit. I believe though that it's an essential service for the community to exist. And so personally, I don't have a problem with contributing to that, whether it be the ARPA funds or going forward, because there are so many other requirements for the water department that it becomes, if, support of the water system becomes a more general obligation by the town. I don't have a problem with that, because if the town doesn't have a functioning water system, for all intents and purposes, the town ceases to exist. I don't feel like it lives well as an island with my well.
I agree with you completely. I mean, if you think about the opposite scenario, okay, the water system, as we know it, implodes, and what we're gonna do, tell everybody, okay, 500 people, you all gotta dig wells tomorrow. It'll be nuts.
Right.
It's just not, it's not a solution.
Right. And not only is it it's not a solution for a bunch of different reasons, among which, when you get to small lots, like the 20,000 square foot minimum lots in town.
Right.
That have septic systems on them, and their next door neighbors have septic systems on them. There are a lot of lots in town where you could not put a well and maintain the required separation distance between the well and a septic system. So,
I mean, that's what happened on Plum.
yeah, right, exactly, yeah, that was, yeah.
When
26.
No, it's sooner than that.
But no, encumbered, I believe, but 24, I read
I
it. but
thought it was 24.
Did I read it wrong? 24, and I could be wrong.
I thought it was 24,
Sure.
June 20 of 24. But it's kind of, no, Archie's got, it must be obligated in 21 to 24 and spent by 26. So, okay. So, but yeah, this is definitely going to be a focus with this new DPW position, to have someone who can read all the fine print, which is changing constantly. This is an older summary from the fall.
So, but I mean, I think we've at least come to the point that if we can agree on that philosophic point, that's good. I mean,
Well, other than COVID uses, that's pretty much all left.
Yeah.
So.
and some
yeah.
public health things,
Right.
yeah. So we get the,
And sidewalks would be excluded from that? Is that under public transportation?
I don't think sidewalks, I don't know. I've never understood that those would be eligible, but
so Angus, do we need the report from Tia and Howard related to the forthcoming system requirements in order to do the main replacements, or is the main replacements designed pretty much, they know what they're gonna do, they just need to get money to do it.
I think we've definitely got some more research we need to do on this ARPA funds. There's a lot of fine print,
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
talking
but-
about in terms of the
but for
water
instance,
projects.
but even the water projects, this, that it's got to meet the SRF standards. I don't know what that means.
It's not on the bar, so Tate and Howard will help us with that?
No, they're helping us with pursuing the SRF funds. So we know for the church and Prospect Streets that they're gonna, prepare that the project notification for. I forget the terminology, but will that be eligible or not? I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, this I think we need to be doing instead of like all the projects we're doing. This should be like one of our top priorities.
So this will be the top priority for the.
Yeah, with the new, yeah, but we got to get that. I'm meeting with Wayne tomorrow. We're trying to carve
This
out
is-
some time to
this
get
is-
that.
Instead of grant money that we think we can get, we have to look, we have this money.
Yes, And we only have half of it. An equal amount of what you see on the books is still coming our way.
Wait, so.
We're gonna have
doesn't
1.4
start
million,
100
correct.
Start 104,000?
Yeah, yeah.
So do they have to be physical projects? When you talk about groundwater protection, habitat protection, could that be land purchases?
I don't know. It's funny because between me and members of my office, we've been to a number of webinars on this, but there's just so much information and it's not the information you're looking for. So it's really kind of self-help. You have to just dig through all the websites and.
I don't think desalination. Desalination.
That's no way to go.
What's the spelling?
They're unbelievable.
Those kids are unbelievable.
There was speed spelling.
The speed thing, they had to have turned it, when the judges had to have turned the speed of the tape down, because I couldn't get the letters she was saying, it was so fast.
There were words that I had never heard before. And they were spelling. And
At like 100 miles an hour.
So we're just gonna wait and see what the growth is setting.
Yeah, and I think I need to make sure that this is going to be eligible before I'm reading the language about that any ARPA funds would be subject to oversight rules, internal controls, documentation, so forth. So I feel like before I ask the board to vote something, there ought to be a form of motion that sets out all of that, just so we do it right the first time. Because we need to know what we're getting into here.
So what happens when we pick a project or projects or whatever? Are you then just basically good to go, or what happens?
I don't know.
Oh,
In terms of like, do we need to report at the Treasury that this is now an approved project?
Yeah.
Right. I do know that the authority to allocate the funds rests with this board. Tim confirmed that quite a while ago. But in terms of reporting on, I do know that just a month ago, we had to do a report to the Treasury simply stating
the
that.
US Treasury? Or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
state
to the US Treasury,
Okay.
simply stating that no funds had been allocated yet. And I do know that it took many hours of staff time to do that report
Really?
because of the
Just to say
specific
you haven't
portal,
spent anything?
because of the specific portal.
Okay.
And I was able to log in and get it done, but Stephanie tried again and again and again. And even though I kept setting her up with permissions, because she was trying to take it off my desk. I went through it again. I gave her all the permissions and it wouldn't let her log in and it kept blocking her and she was back and forth with the state and so I ended up having to spend half a day just so she could report that we haven't allocated a dime. It took, between the two of us, I don't even know how many hours it took her. I spent probably 2 hours or more just to report nothing. So we had to do a report. I forget if it was May 1st, April 1st or something, but it was, it came up at a terrible time and we had to drop everything and do it. So,
But a lot of these COVID things that were created, the infrastructure, personnel, and software
Yeah.
and stuff wasn't created.
right,
Congress just said, okay, here's
right.
50 billion to go do something.
Right.
But it takes a while to get all that going. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I need to learn more on this. it's been primarily Stephanie and Jenny who've gone to a lot. I went to some webinars, but they've been to more than I have. But I don't know if they would have answers to the questions you guys asked. It's new people.
I know, at one point, Angus, several weeks ago, we talked about that issue brought up guardrail on
Yep.
Farm Ave.
Yep.
It seemed like that was a stretch, but I still wonder about that.
Yeah, that was for that RAP funding.
Oh, was that the RAP one? Okay.
I
thought
think
that
it was the winter something.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
So-
Yet another bucket of funding with a lot of fine print. Yeah. The wage schedule. So this is not the per person. That's actually, that'll be on. Normally that would be on for the next meeting, and I think it will be on for the next meeting. It may need to be retooled later for the wage study, but this is just to approve the COLA, just the ranges as they are today.
So this is a question I've had on the grade 2, why is the minimum hourly rate lower than? It just keeps getting carried forward every year.
Oh, that's interesting.
I pointed that out. Not you, but
Not to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pointed it out to someone else. Okay.
I think it just didn't take room.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Looks like that formula's wrong. And that, yeah, that I never noticed that, but that doesn't look right. We can, let's table this to the next time. The only reason I put this on is we wanted to post the water position, and so I posted it. We already posted it based on the 2%. But I thought, just as a housekeeping, let's just get this done. But of course, nothing's as simple as that. So, but yeah, no, that's yeah. I don't want you to vote something and then amend it. Yeah, that's clearly wrong.
Yeah, so minimum wage currently is 15 or
14.25. It's right at the bottom of that page, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And then the minimum wage goes up again in January 1. And that's where it'll stay. unless
Yeah, that
it changes.
1368 looks like it's somehow a key punch thing. So.
But the grade 1 is going to be priced out pretty easily.
Yeah.
All right, Jay.
Nope.
Yeah, we talked about earlier. Yeah, I mean, it's late. Someone at a meeting 2 or 3 meetings ago had asked this be on the next meeting, and then it was overlooked. And then the meeting after that, I think, was when Rick was away, so we didn't want to put it on there. So I suggested to Archie we put it on just so kind of we didn't forget about it. But I don't know if now's the right time. I did think those Pembroke slides were kind of a nice articulation of why that town, which doesn't really have anything to do with our town, but
No, but
I thought it was kind of on
but the
point.
rationales were similar.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that if you look at the org charts that they're showing, it's much clearer in terms of that there's still these appointed boards and commissions, but that the personnel oversight, at least in that town, is consolidated in a way that here it's more ambiguous.
But it did look like they had, their before was similar to our before.
I thought so too. Yeah.
As a, probably, I would assume it's a.
It is, yes, but over 20,000
Well,
people.
I don't know when we find time to actually have a more substantive conversation about it, but personally, I think we should make that happen. Tonight, probably not that hot. committee would be a good thing to dig into it, you know, and see where exactly it leads. You know,
Well, if
we have,
Yeah, I think we have to figure what to do is probably easier than figuring out the methodology, which methodology we pick to get there. I don't think we're gonna actually object too much to what we want to do. It's more how we do it, right?
yeah, I think there's a couple of approaches, you know, there's the home rule. And I can't recall the name of the other approach, but,
We talked about one is appointing a committee, and the other is electing a commission.
but,
I mean, I could say-
but I read another piece and essentially there were two sort of divergent ways of going about it. One of them, you really commit heavily up front.
That's the charter commission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you commit heavily up front and then if it doesn't fly, you really sunk a lot of effort and time. And because in the end, it needs to fly because it needs to be voted at town meeting.
It's one thing I was thinking about, you know, for those two options is if you elect a commission that's independent, select, versus if we appoint a committee, then arguably, you know, and I think I read one example where the select board disbanded it. What was going on, you know, so.
Really. Yeah. That's interesting. You know, don't know about that one. You know, you wonder, did the select board have an agenda beforehand?
That's the
Or-
information.
Or did they appoint a really bad committee?
Yeah, they-
Or was it both?
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, somehow we've done this one.
Because no matter what, it's gonna take a couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, just looking at the time frame and the stuff that was in the packet, you know, just to start the process, you need an annual town meeting, or you need an annual election. So, you know, and we, you know, I was thinking, well, maybe we could do the midterm. No, you can't, based on this, you can't do the midterm election. It has to be an annual town election. So,
Oh, it does.
yeah, so our first option, just to kick the ball, the first kick is essentially waiting until next year's annual town election.
May 1st.
But that's for a commission. Yeah. Which is a really high stakes, you know, thing. And I don't know that that's where this town is, but it's one of the procedural options. And it's got pros and cons, just like anything, but.
Well, can the org chart issue be resolved without going, you know?
Yeah.
the charter?
Yeah.
So I think that's where we need to focus.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have these, you know,
Yeah.
lingering issues that were, you know, brought forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly they're the more immediate things, or more immediate issues, but, you know, I think that there are other issues that are sort of lingering.
I mean, there are discrepancies between the legislation and, you know, we had the, what is the water, you know, the 1936 water thing. There are things that need to be cleaned up, but, and that would have to be done ultimately through, you know, an act of the legislature, but, like, to your point, Whitney, can we do some things on the organizational chart without having to have a new charter, or at least have something passed by the legislature, a home rule? I think we can, but it won't be as,
Well, it's not a substitute for.
right, exactly.
But I don't think we can afford to wait for 2 years to get a charter or however long it will take to address some of the issues.
No, I agree, yeah.
I hear what you're saying. My concern is that, I think we've been doing a lot of Band-Aiding. And my concern is that we just keep Band-Aiding as opposed to trying to sort of fix the problem with the problems at the base.
Well, we should be doing both. If there are problems that could be corrected by a long-term solution, doesn't mean we can't do the short-term fix while.
And we've been doing that. It's a piece of, to some extent, it seems like it's a bandwidth issue.
I do think that, the new positions in the budget are gonna help everything.
Yeah.
So I know, I'd like to get those posted this month and try to get those new bodies in here.
Yeah.
Because I think that's just, it's so long overdue. It really, it affects everything we're trying to do, just the bandwidth issues are so bad.
So what about appointing a committee to start looking into what's involved in the charter? Something that Mark has expressed interest in. I don't know if it needs to be a committee or they just work on a project, do something that work for you.
I think he would, I don't know, but I would think he or anyone would want some kind of charge so that they're kind of, justified in doing the work that they're being asked to do something. So, towns sometimes will do a town government study committee. I do think that, especially over the last year, but really over, there have been examples given of how the form of government does kind of hold the town or prevents the town from doing things or doing them in a coordinated way. But I don't think that's like in any way broadly understood. And I think some kind of a town government study committee or even, could help to articulate why the current form of government does not, in fact, best serve the public interest relative to something that would be more aligned, where the town could speak with one voice, whereas right now it really can't on some critical issues that do prevent progress. They just prevent progress. That's not political, it's just fact at this point. So I think, if there could be more individuals in town who were aware of that and had facts to back that up, I think it would help. Because right now it's still kind of siloed. We see the challenge of a single conceptual planning process for a single piece of land in this town and how many cooks in the kitchen. It's, maybe people like it that way. Maybe that's how they want it. But it doesn't allow for progress. It's a lot of time spent to just running quicksand.
When you finally got something accomplished, well, it'll make it really good. It's really small.
Yeah, well, all the missed opportunities, all the time that's spent that could be better spent.
Well, I don't know where else we go with that right now.
Unless we make a decision, we're just going to keep talking about it.
Yeah, that's not.
So, I mean,
let's
yeah,
think about it.
do you want to, do you want to think about, instead of like a standing committee, that, you could have a targeted committee. You've done that at least once or twice before, where you've appointed committees for finite periods of time rather than just a new committee that's on the books year after year, but something that's set up with a clearly defined charge, clearly defined timeline with and reporting back to the board after a period of time. That could help everybody, including staff, justify the effort to make a push. I don't think now is the exact right time for that with all the other things. But it's, I could imagine something maybe starting in the fall, starting, Labor Day through the end of January, some finite timeline that's then giving a report with recommendations that could advance the ball.
So if that was the timeline, seems to me that we would want the timeline to be such that if there is actionable product at the end, or something that can lead to actionable product, that would need to be addressed by either town election or town meeting, that we should make sure that we're aligned with and next year's annual town meeting and election.
Yes.
March.
Okay. I was asking about the legislative, obviously the Beacon Hill runs on a 2-year calendar. And so if there was special legislation, even to amend or even tweak existing legislation, it sounds.
Home rules. are
Yeah.
different.
Okay, how does that work?
Home rules can be submitted anytime. If it's special.
But to have a realistic prospect of success.
I believe when we did the town manager act, it was not, it was about 6 or 7 months. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, home rules.
Okay, so it doesn't need to follow the same filing timeline.
No,
Okay,
that's
all right.
more like overarching legislation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Because
right.
they pretty much, okay, if you want to do it, fine.
Yeah,
Go
that's
for it. But
exactly
they
it.
just want to put a couple things in there to make sure that to prove that they read it, but basically, it's your problem. Fine.
But additionally, what tends to happen is boards pass things, or like the select board passes something, they send it, they change it, we come back to it. So my suggestion would be we come up with a draft, we hand it over, and they can run it through legal and then get it back. So we don't have to do that pass back and forth.
We did have a couple of back and forth.
Yeah, that can be eliminated too, so that does
But
cut down the
even
process.
with that, once they got the second draft or whatever, it just went,
Yeah.
I was surprised. I thought it was gonna be worse.
No, if home rules, as long as they're reasonable, I mean, as long as it's not like outlandish stuff or things that go against the norm. Like one of the home rules that always comes up is, I think Amherst always tries to get non-citizens to vote in local elections. Like they present that every 2 years. They never pass that because that's outside of the norm of everything else that happens. Home rule petitions like starting a charter or converting to a town manager position.
Or adjusting the town manager act in a way that eliminates some of the.
Yeah, that stuff like that generally doesn't.
I mean, that would be if we could. Let's think about that right now. Why don't we try to make half a dozen corrections to the town manager act? Get that for the spring, while at the same time thinking of the bigger picture, but at least get we could correct the worst quirks with a lot less work and maybe it would be fixed by a year from now.
I think that's a great suggestion, and I think a half dozen is probably a high number. I think it's 4 or 5 things that kind of, and that's just my opinion, but I don't think it's like a fundamental problem. I think there's a handful of things that are problematic, but I think that's a great suggestion.
Wow, so I would.
To start looking at that existing legislation as more of a living document, we could start to circulate the word, get red line revisions and build some consensus around those.
I mean, and it doesn't mean we don't look at, as Wendy said, we don't get the big picture long term, but this is doable in a much shorter amount of time rather than the charter.
definitely.
And Senator Tarr's office was, assuming he gets reelected, they were very helpful in getting it through their chief of staff was very helpful in getting it through the legislature.
I mean, he's been doing this for a while, so the process pretty well now.
So I guess, do you have the 4 or 5 hot things that should be fixed? I'm sure you.
Yeah.
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 So
On
can
the
you-
spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I not in Redline, but yeah, I kind of know what my short list is. So yeah,
So can you circulate a red line? or is
Yeah.
that-
yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's great.
That could be done prior to January.
Oh, yeah.
We could present that as regular legislation.
Good. Yeah, I think a couple of tweaks could make a big difference. Next is meeting minutes.
Rebecca, I appreciate you.
It's just so nice to have them time. You know, you're actually, oh, yeah.
I remember that, yeah, actually refreshed the memory. Yeah, I mean, I think they look great. I'll move to approve it as presented.
Second.
So one type of with it. Yes.
All those in favor? Aye.
So I'll go through these updates pretty quickly unless there's questions, but the first one, so we were contacted about 2 weeks ago by S&P. They do this every so often. The last one they did was not since 2016, 2017. So quite a bit has changed since then. So we've been hard at work.
Oh, I wondered why it's so old. The dates are
Yeah,
so old.
yeah, that's the last. Now they do, an update every year with every time you issue debt or reissue debt. But this is more of the deeper dive. And so we've been working, myself, Stephanie, Caitlin, Christian, and also with Abby and Peter Frazier from Hilltop. They'll be on the call tomorrow. So this is tomorrow. We've got a Zoom. It's actually a Teams meeting, which I hate, kind of like a Zoom. I had to have Jake set up Teams so I could do a Teams. Anyway. But I think we're going to be in really good shape. We went to, I circulated the list of questions that they'd sent. We've got a whole bunch of markups. We've got all our facts and figures, we're going to be able to speak, intelligently to each of those items, probably in much more detail than we'll be able to cover in the hour scheduled for the
You know,
call.
it's interesting, I read through this, the structure of what's here now is like an order of magnitude better and more than it was for the last call, for the last day before.
Yeah, I mean, we've made a lot of headway with the financial policies, and that's something that the former board, with Archie and Joe and Glenn really made that happen. That was a big help. The ratings agencies love that kind of thing. All of our financial numbers are great. Our reserves are up. We've got plenty of excess levy capacity. Our debt is, in FY23, our debt's 1.7% of the operating budget. That's unheard of how low that is.
I don't even know anyone who has that.
No, it really is. It's unheard of. So, our collective bargaining agreements are settled. Anyhow, we've got a whole lot of things that, one thing that, they're going to be really interested and pleased about is to hear about the work we're doing on, climate change adaptation planning. They really want to know about towns that are thinking longer term, thinking, proactively. Cyber is definitely going to be something they're going to want to hear about. So yeah, I think we're well prepared. Fingers crossed. But that's tomorrow. AA+. So we're second from the top, and for a town our size, it's difficult to get to AAA. But, you know, they've, Cambridge Trust has said that maybe we could, or I'm sorry, Hilltop has said maybe we could get to like AA+ with a positive outlook, something that, what they said is they don't want to give you AAA unless they feel it's totally durable, because they don't want to go up and down. Like if they give you that, they want to know that that's how it's gonna be, you know, for a long time. So even if on paper we might meet it, it's all, it's not, I'm not in that line of work, so I don't really know why, but we do look very good on paper. And I told my staff I would wear a tie tomorrow.
I'll take a break.
So long term, it's ironic, you know, that we have to take on debt for debt for, you know, there's a lot of things going on there. And of course, that's going to impact.
Well, but we're so far below the, in fact, I mean, yeah, I think we're gonna need to explain why is our debt burden so low.
We're waiting for that rating to go up. That's
So
Yeah, it's
some of our existing debt could be paid off short.
Yeah,
We're gonna have even less
yeah,
percentage.
yeah, we will. So once everything I have now is just notes, but we are gonna write something up and provide it to them following the call. And once I'll share that with you all as well. But it's been a good iterative process. Like everything, it didn't come along at the timing of our choosing. We only learned about this about 2 weeks ago, so we've had to kind of clear the space to be ready, but I think we'll be ready. We did get formal approval to item M for the extension of the MassWorks grant, so that's huge. That was a big win. We kind of thought that was coming, but to get it formalized is very positive.
Yeah, that's good.
Item N, Wayne had sent that around, but I wanted to just provide some recognition on the posted agenda that project is underway, going well, and should be fully online in the first or second week of July for the playground. Item O, we have two very good interns. They both seem very good, starting a week from today. And we've had a lot of support and engagement from the volunteers who've helped make that happen right from the start. So Michelle has really been doing tremendous work on pulling that all together. It's been a huge effort, and I think it's going to pay off. I think it's really going to result in some good work and a lot of mapping. Item P, this one stop was a huge nightmare getting this thing done. Again, partly because of the portal, word counts, character counts, and right at the last minute, there were a couple of things we had to upload that we didn't know we were going to need to provide. Even though Leah went to all the webinars on this, and she said they never said anything about that, but we had to do it. One of them was we had to upload a map. Like, how would we upload a map when our action plan's not due till the end of December? The state response to our action plan is not due till next July. How would we upload a map of where these locations are going to be zoned? But it would not let me submit it without a map. So I had to make a decision, and I put you saw the red text on it, and this is not where.
This isn't what we're doing.
No, it's not. And it was, and we didn't learn that till Friday, and the thing was due Friday at midnight. And it was like, because you don't see it till you're going through the portal, and it doesn't. And the other one is it asked us for a scope, from the consultant. We're like, we haven't bid this out. We haven't even gotten the funding. We haven't gotten the approval of the scope yet. Why would we have a vendor proposal? So we had to write that special memo on page 140 that Leah helped me with.
I use one of those maps with the.
But these are the kinds of things that it's like, these state administrators, it's very counterproductive, very counterproductive.
First you get something stuffed down your throat that you really didn't want to have to try to swallow. And then they make it taste.
Yeah. It's really terrible. But we got it submitted on time. That was due Friday. Item Q, that's a typical memo that goes out toward the end of every year. This year, we made absolute sure it went to every single chair of every board and committee and commission that has any budget whatsoever. In the past, it didn't go to anyhow, we made sure, and Jim's office helped make sure it went to everybody. Because even if someone's got a $700 budget, they need to know, encumbrances have to be, everything. So item R, this will be on the next, the reissuance of the bond anticipation notes. That'll be on the June 27th agenda. So I wanted it tonight just as a reminder. That's kind of a pro forma thing, but I think a year from now, we might want to look at doing longer term borrowing. It all depends if we think we're going to have other capital needs. That would support a larger bond issue.
So, I've wondered about, so I think it was Hilltop that recommended, the bands and the I guess. Some down that much here, but at what point do we cross that line?
Yeah. Yeah, and they'll be there on the 27th, so I think that'd be we could talk with them about that.
Processing costs on a smaller one are a bigger percentage than.
Right.
So that changes it. Yeah.
Well, exactly, but I understand that, but at what point does, if your loan percentage on the big number now goes, is up by another point or two, at what point do they cross? But that's, who could have imagined world events?
Then finally, stormwater, we're still wrestling with this. I'm trying my best to get a vendor under contract to help navigate some of this. And so far, I do have a promising lead. I had a conversation today, but last week I reached out to one, and the consultants are just as busy as we are, and I talked to a very, reputable firm, and they said we have no bandwidth for this.
So what's the ultimate outcome? Do we decide that existing projects that are halfway complete are still subject, or what?
That's the planning board's position. That is not what anybody on staff thinks is the right decision. This is 100% because the planning board is taking a very hard line against the advice of their own staff and every single person on staff and town attorney. But they're not wrong from a literal reading of the bylaw. It's just a matter of reasonableness.
Did you anticipate that this might end up in a courtroom from a developer?
I sure hope not. I don't think so. I really don't. And I think that some of these are,
More like just more work rather than.
Well, it's
expense to the developers
Or a homeowner, not even.
yeah, no, I think it sounds like I talked to Paul today. He said some of these they've filed amended building plans that have somewhat reduced to get just below the acre. So some have kind of just, but where that can get messy is there's a reference to land that was in common ownership as of the effective date of the bylaw, which was April 1st. So there was one 3-lot A&R where I think it went to like the agreements were all signed in March, but it didn't actually go to record until into April. So technically as of April 1st, it was all in one owner. And I think the planning board's expectation is even if the first lot is less than an acre, if the second lot comes in, even if that's 10 years down the road, that's going to bring the whole site into compliance with the stormwater bylaw, which is going to be logistically very challenging because at that point, one of the 3 lots would already be built. But this is some variation of this is going on, I think, across the Commonwealth and probably across the country with these MS4 guidelines. The consultant I talked to today said that she said there was a categorical exclusion of single-family homes are not subject to the stormwater, but that the way some bylaws are written, it brings them into it. It's very complicated, but it's just unfortunately one more thing that we have to try to become expert at and try to get done in short time. So we have a stormwater working group meeting on Thursday. It's only on the calendar for 30 minutes. I think it's probably going to be more like 90 minutes or 2 hours to really deal with it. So that's, basically, me, Wayne, Sam, Leah, Michelle, we have to like find the time and deal with this because it's I don't know. It's been a real problem. It's been very difficult because there's sitting here right now, there's 3 different stormwater scopes I'm working on. This is only one of 3. It's been a huge time burden. The second is trying to get internal cohesion among all of with the stormwater bylaw and zoning bylaws and subdivision regs and IDDE regs, and try to get some kind of cohesive, some consultant to look at them all at once, find the internal inconsistencies and advise us how we can make this as streamlined as possible. So I'm talking with a second consultant on that. And then Leah's also asked for extra support for the processing of the stormwater applications, not related to specific applications, but at the pre-construction level, so she can properly advise people on how the bylaw will apply, because she doesn't feel, qualified to do that, and so wants to have a consultant on hand for those pre-application meetings. So there's 3 different consultant scopes that I'm working on for stormwater. And this is why I can't find time for ARPA. I mean, it's nuts. I don't know, doing the best we can, but I wanted to put something on the agenda just so you know this is still a very present issue.
Okay, anybody have anything put on for next time? After that, I guess for the winter.
I do hope on the 27th we can, I'd love to have kind of revisit the whole goal setting and come up with some kind of project list. It's just been too busy to even do that.
Can you just put our
Yep.
things together, just don't have to make a $1 million spreadsheet, just.
Yeah. I mean, you all did a just slightly different variation on it. I can scan it in so you can see what I'm working with. You were very concise. One of you, I forget, maybe it was you, was very thorough. Like he put every one of them into one of the boxes, which is great. But to like, and I forget, anyhow, I could share the raw data easily.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's a start.
Oh, I think I did put every single.
You did.
one.
You
Yeah,
did.
You didn't follow directions.
I did.
So, well, in a way he did, because he put them all into a box, even if it's a, future.
I said, I don't want to have anything,
Yeah.
I made my own box, like, I don't want to have anything to do with these. I really think I did.
That's the no-no box.
Yeah. But yeah, getting those 2 staff positions filled is so important.
Yeah.
We're drowning.
Problem is, there isn't enough time to figure out how to save time.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I got, right.
Or to do what's necessary. to
Yeah,
save time.
I gotta write an offer letter for the planning assistant. I gotta write an offer letter for the new COA van driver. I gotta meet with, I mean, it's just day to day, every day warrants. It's the
You
same
have to
stuff.
write a letter to the driver. That seems excessive.
You know, in the old days, they wouldn't have, but I will tell you, when you're looking in the future, it's important to have an offer letter on file. You either, I don't know, it's important.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's. But we did interview someone. He seemed to be good, so.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.